Distinguished delegates, Agenda Item 4 of the 13th Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will commence shortly. May I please ask all to take their seats?
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Please have your seat so we can start. My name is Abakan Jane Madison from the Marshall Islands. And Excellencies, distinguished delegates, a very good afternoon. Welcome back to this plenary meeting of the 13th Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development. The meeting is called to order. Oh. We shall now continue with agenda item 4, review of regional progress and opportunities for achieving the SDGs. Under this agenda item, the forum will consider the remaining 3 items. We will consider them one by one. After each sub-item, I will open the floor for country and stakeholder statements. Excellencies, distinguished guest delegates, please allow me to open sub-agenda item on progress towards the attainment of Sustainable Development Goals 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. We will proceed with the reporting from the parallel SDG roundtables held yesterday and this morning. The four roundtables discussed the SDGs under review in 2026, Sustainable Development Goals 6, 7, 9, and 11. Discussion on Sustainable Development Goal 17 were mainstreamed across all the roundtables. The discussions set out to establish a shared understanding of the outlook and progress on the goals at the regional level and regional priority areas for accelerated action on the goals. Each rapporteur has 4 minutes to deliver a summary of the discussions and identify priorities. Complete SDG profiles for each goal are available on the APSD website, and identified areas for action will be reflected in the chair's summary. We will start with the roundtable on SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, and I would like to invite Mr. Sangay Punso, Deputy Chief Planning Officer, Office of Cabinet Affairs and Strategic Coordination, Bhutan, to take the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates. The Roundtable on Sustainable Development Goal 6 on water and sanitation was organized by ESCAP with valuable support from ADB, IFAD, IUCN, UNEP, UNESCO, UNFPA, and UN Habitat. In December 2026, the world will convene for the 2026 UN Water Conference to accelerate progress on goal number 6. For this, the roundtable drew from the priority actions identified in the global goal profile and provided further recommendations for accelerating goal 6 implementation based on the themes of the interactive dialogues of the upcoming conference. First, in relation to water for people, participants emphasized institutionalizing a right-based approach to water governance and framing water as a public good and legal entitlement. Structural barriers to access must be reduced, particularly for people living in poverty, communities in informal settlements, women, youth, and climate vulnerable populations. Participants highlighted targeted data-driven interventions, stronger accountability, and inclusive leadership, especially for women and youth. Second, on water for prosperity, discussions stress a holistic valuation of water, demand management across sectors, and strengthening water accounting, monitoring, and regulatory frameworks. Scaling water use productivity, nexus approach, and circular water systems, including wastewater treatment and pollution reduction, was identified as being a critical. Third, on water for planet, priority actions highlighted the need for common water data standards, open information system, and integrating citizen science and indigenous knowledge into monitoring and reporting. Ecosystems were recognized as natural infrastructure. Embedding water-focused, nature-based solutions into climate and biodiversity framework was prioritized. Fourth, on water for cooperation, discussions emphasized strengthening scientific and technical cooperation by harmonizing standards, strengthening river basin networks, and enhancing data sharing capacities. Traditional knowledge and community-generated data were recognized as valuable complements. Robust legal and monitoring frameworks were emphasized. Fifth, for water in multilateral processes, participants stressed the importance of reducing fragmentation and strengthening coordination and synergies across agencies and conventions. Integrating water more effectively into voluntary national reviews and involving civil society in global processes and implementation was prioritized. Sixth, on investments for water, discussions underscored increasing public financing, leveraging innovative financing mechanisms, avoiding unsustainable debt, and ensuring early, meaningful participation of indigenous peoples and local communities. Lastly, in relation to goal number 17, participants emphasized partnerships, policy coherence, financing, technology exchange, and knowledge sharing as foundational enablers of accelerated progress. Overall, the roundtable underscored that achieving SDG 6 requires integrated, systemic and inclusive action across government, governance, data, ecosystems, financing, and cooperation, while maintaining ambition and strengthening collective implementation efforts across the region. I thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite His Excellency Ms. Margarita Arpitze, Georgia, as the rapporteur of the Roundtable on SDG 7, Affordable and Clean Energy, to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. Your Excellency and distinguished delegates and ladies and gentlemen and dear colleagues, the Roundtable on Sustainable Development Goal 7 and Affordable and Clean Energy was organized and by the Energy Division of ESCAP and UNEP with input from UNDP, FAO, ILO, OHCHR, UNESCO, IOM, UNICEF, and UNOVS and the UN. The roundtable noted the mix and progress on SDG 7 in Asia and the Pacific. While significant progress has been made in increasing access to electricity, while near universal access achieved in 2023, progress has been shown in improving access to clean cooking fuels and technologies. At the same time, and the share of renewables, including dispatchable renewables, such as in hydropower, geothermal, and concentrated and solar power, and which the thermal storage in the energy mix and it has not grown substantially. This is in this page and increasing an installed capacity of renewable energy system being introduced and energy year and against the blackboard on increasing energy demand and growth. The roundtable discussed the following priority actions, access and to advance and progress on SDG 7 and in Asia and the Pacific. First, creating and enabling environment for clean energy and investments and transparency and the actions for improving energy data quality and integrated planning that aligns and policy targets, sectoral strategies, financial mechanisms. Finance should also combine public instruments, blended models, carbon markets, and inclusive macrofinance. Second, it's very important, it's in promoting energy efficiency and end use and electrification by setting ambitious targets for building, appliances, and industrial equipment, and providing incentives for upgrades paired with policies that tackle air pollution, reduce waste, and improve productively in commodity and value chain. Modernization and infrastructure and for resilience and flexibility, including this through smart grid, battery storage, and digital technologies, and by using incentives that build domestic capabilities and resilience and supply chain. Fostering inclusive and responsible the energy action for a just transition by engaging women, young, children, indigenous people, persons with disabilities, and other marginalized groups. Leveraging emerging technologies and for decarbonization, including advancing storage, hydrogen, digital system, carbon capture, and nuclear were considered, with full and life cycle planning avoiding future environmental and safety risks. The roundtable discussion also highlighted the critical role of the partnership and financing, policy, also data availability, and this including regional and sub-regional platforms for the enabling and dialogue, knowledge exchange, and coordinated action. Collaboration between governments, private sector, and civil society, blended in finance and the catalytic and the funding and mechanisms, technology transfer and research and development and the support, and strengthened and data system to support an evidence-based and policy making. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have the honor to invite Mr. Hussein Husseinov, Advisor to the Minister of Economy and Secretary of the National SDG Coordination Council, Azerbaijan, to present the report of the Roundtable on SDG 9, Industry, Innovation, and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The roundtable on SDG 9 on industry innovation and infrastructure was co-organized by UNIDO, ITU, UNOPS and ILO under the overall coordination of ESCAP. This session brought together government representatives, civil society, private sector, youth, international organization for a structured dialogue comprising opening remarks, goal profile presentation, and moderated panel discussion, 3 thematic breakout groups, and a closing plenary synthesis. The goal profile presentation highlighted that while manufacturing value added in Asia Pacific continues to rise, this expansion has not translated into proportional employment growth, and its benefits have not been shared equitably. Access to finance remains limited for small-scale manufacturing enterprises. The carbon intensity from industrial processes remains high. Although there has been important progress in terms of digital connectivity and infrastructure, gaps still remain and are at risk of widening for groups in marginalized situations. The Roundtable's priority areas to advance SDG 9 progress in Asian Pacific covered by following strategic areas. First, promoting inclusive industrial employment through strengthening skills development system, including technical and vocational education, lifelong learning, and reskilling aligned with digital and green industrial demands, with targeted support for women, youth, persons with disabilities, and rural communities. Industrial policy is critical for creating sustained and equitable opportunities that respond to the needs of people, promoting low-carbon industrial development and just energy transition. Second, broadening access to innovative and concessional financing for small and medium-sized enterprise and startups close persistent gaps in early-stage capital and enables the adoption of clean technologies and circular economy practices. Third, building resilient universality, accessible infrastructure through transparent governance, blended finance mechanism, universal design principle, and participatory planning that engage end-user communities, including persons with disability from the outset. Fourth, fostering inclusive innovation ecosystem by establishing regional innovation hubs, reforming education curricula to integrate interdisciplinary and climate-resilient approaches, and developing enabling policy and regulatory environments, including regulatory sandboxes for sustainable technologies. The roundtable discussion also highlighted the critical role of partnership, financing, and regional cooperation as catalytic enablers for SDG 9 progress. The importance of granular and open data was highlighted to guide and inform evidence-based and inclusive decision-making. Participants called for strengthening multi-stakeholder collaboration, linking governments and private sector, youth and civil society, enhanced South-South and regional cooperation platforms for knowledge and technology transfer, and innovative financing to support green technology adoption by small and medium-sized enterprise. This partnership and means of implementation mechanism under SDG 17 were identified as an essential multipliers for inclusive industrial transformation across the Asia Pacific. I thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Lepayata Laite Gaunavinaka, Climate Change Adaptation Specialist, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Fiji Rapporteur of the Roundtable on SDG 11 on Sustainable Cities and Communities. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the Roundtable on Sustainable Development Goal 11 on Sustainable Cities and Communities was jointly organized by ESCAP, UN Habitat, UN Women, with inputs from IOM, UNAIDS, UNFPA, and UNOPS. I'm honored to share the key messages and recommendations emerging from our REACH discussions yesterday, which covered the following strategic areas. The first was on inclusive multi-level governance and urban planning. Second was on scaling up urban finance and investments. The third was on digital transformation for robust and people-centered urban data systems. And fourth, on regional and global cooperation for effective and scalable urban solutions. Our dialogue was grounded in a clear reality that the progress on SDG 11 remains uneven, and the costs of inaction are rising, measured in lives disrupted, damaged infrastructure, and denied opportunities, especially to those most vulnerable. First, inclusive and multi-level governance is the foundation of sustainable urban transformation. National commitments must be effectively localized, including at the community level. Local governments need stronger mandates, greater accountability, and predictable financing, along with enhanced technical capacities to implement risk-informed, gender-responsive, care-enabling, and human rights-based urban policies to leave no one behind. Planning must integrate climate, resilience, urban design, sustainable mobility, integrated waste management, and adequate housing, while embedding care systems into urban solutions. Second, we heard a call to scale up urban finance. Without adequate and accessible financing, ambition cannot translate into impact. Strengthening local revenue systems, improving public financial management, and unlocking innovative instruments are critical in this process. Equally important is supporting cities to develop investment-ready projects, projects in resilient infrastructure, nature-based solutions, circular economy, sustainable transport, and climate-adaptive housing. Third, digital transformation must serve people. Persistent data gaps limit our ability to capture intersectionality and vulnerabilities that target the most vulnerable. Investing in strengthening local data ecosystems and deploying people-centered digital tools, such as digital twins, urban dashboards, and AI-enabled early warning systems, can enhance preparedness, transparency, and accountability. Finally, the city-to-city, regional, and global cooperation emerged as a powerful enabler. By accelerating knowledge exchange, scaling and replicating innovations and best practices, we can ensure that urban transformation is coherent, inclusive, and future-ready. Excellencies, SDG 11 is not only about built environment of cities, but also about communities and their dignity, cultural heritage, and resilience. The choices we make today will define the sustainability of urban life for generations to come. Above all, urban development must be co-created with communities, ensuring that participation, safety, and equity shape the cities of tomorrow. I thank you, Chair.
To all distinguished rapporteurs, I would like to thank you for your brief and concise reports and for conveying those key messages from the SDG roundtables. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to invite the distinguished delegates to intervene on agenda item 4, progress towards the attainment of Sustainable Development Goals 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. I will open the floor to statements from delegates in the speaking order as received from the Secretariat. I kindly remind delegates to limit their statement to no longer than 3 minutes, length to allow all delegates the opportunity to speak. The first, I recognize the distinguished delegate from Philippines, to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Fiji.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Philippines continues to pursue a holistic approach to sustainable development to ensure that the three pillars of the Sustainable Development Goals, economic growth, social well-being, and environmental sustainability advance alongside each other. In keeping with our whole-of-nation plus approach, we are leveraging cross-cutting interventions, innovations, multi-stakeholder partnerships, and systemic reforms to advance the 2030 Agenda. We have enhanced our national data ecosystem to provide more granular, more frequent, more timely data to support the monitoring of our progress towards 2030. Based on the Philippines' Sustainable Development Goals Watch and Pace of Progress Report as of 2024, which can be accessed in the website of the Philippine Statistics Authority, 23.7% of our 97 SDGs for which we have data are on track to reach the 2030 targets. 51.5% have progressed, but we need to accelerate to achieve their targets. And 24.7% have regressed, and we need to reverse the trend to achieve their targets. Specifically for the indicators of focus on this APFSD, all indicators under SDG 6, SDG 7, and SDG 17 are either on track or had progress, but needs acceleration. But with a note that we have insufficient data for SDG 17. For example, 97.5% of families have access to drinking water, and 84.7% benefit from basic sanitation. Electricity access improved from 89.6% in 2017 to 92.7% in 2023. For SDG 9 and SDG 11, we have made progress on infrastructure development, research and technological capabilities, and disaster risk management, but have experienced setbacks on industrialization, specifically on manufacturing value added per capita or per GDP, and resilience to natural disasters, specifically deaths, missing, and affected persons from disasters and ambient air quality. While challenges remain, the Philippines stands resolute to achieving the 2030 Agenda. In alignment with the Sevilla commitment, we are investing in innovation and resilience, alongside with deepening partnerships to ensure that sustainable development translates to tangible improvement in people's lives. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mabuhay.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Philippines, for meeting your required minutes. I invite the distinguished delegate from Fiji to be followed by distinguished delegate from China.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Excellencies and distinguished delegates. I'm pleased to deliver remarks on Fiji's progress towards achieving Sustainable Development Goals 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. We have come to realize that with 5 years left for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, a worrying reality emerges for Fiji. As we reflect on our progress, it is important to acknowledge the challenges that Fiji has encountered. While we have made efforts to stay on course, it is anticipated that we may not fully meet our SDG goals by 2030. As indicated on the ESCAP SDG gateway, while certain goals have witnessed progress, there remains a concerning proportion of targets and indicators that are either progressing too slowly or regressing. With respect to SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation, progress remains steady but uneven. Approximately 27% of indicators show improvement since 2015. 2015, while a significant proportion remained stagnant. Encouragingly, SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy stands out as Fiji's strongest performing goal. A substantial majority of indicators, over 80%, demonstrate improving trends. This reflects sustained national commitment to renewable energy transition, energy access expansion, and resilient building within the energy sector. Regarding SDG 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure, approximately one-third of indicators show improvement, with the limited regression observed. However, more than half of the indicators reflect insufficient data, highlighting the need to strengthen monitoring frameworks in areas such as innovation, resilient infrastructure, and technological upgrading. For SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities, trends indicate moderate challenges. While some progress is evident, a notable share of indicators remain stagnant or regressing. Given Fiji's vulnerability to climate-related disasters, strengthening urban resilience, sustainable housing, and disaster risk reduction mechanisms remains a national priority. Finally, SD 17 on partnership for the goals presents a mixed trajectory. While over one-third of indicators demonstrate improvement, a considerable proportion reflects stagnation or regression. This underscores the continuing structural constraints faced by small island developing states in accessing finance, technology transfer, and capacity building support. Taken together, these trends reaffirm that while Fiji has made tangible strides, particularly in clean energy, sustained progress will depend on strengthened implementation capacity, improved data system, and enhanced international cooperation. Strengthening global partnerships and improving access to affordable financing instruments will be critical to unlocking progress across all goals. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Fiji. I invite the distinguished delegate to be followed from China, to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Kiribati.
尊敬的主席女士、各位同事、各位朋友，大家下午好！很高兴参加此次亚太可持续发展论坛。当前亚太地区实施2030年可持续发展议程方面力度不一，许多目标进展缓慢，而缺乏水安全保障是核心的阻碍之一。今年将举行联合国水事会议，在此我聚焦 SDG 6这一生命之基的目标，提出以下行动建议：第一，以系统治理破解水安全危机。水危机本质是治理危机。习近平总书记提出的节水优先、空间均衡、系统治理两手发力的治理理念，为我们提供了科学的指引。应坚持以流域为单元，统筹水灾害防治、水资源节约、水生态修复与水环境治理，强化全流域统一规划管理，从根本上破解复合型水安全挑战。第二，以科技创新强化水安全支撑。面对气候变化不确定性，需加大水文监测、预报预警、数字孪生流域等智慧水利技术的研发应用，通过技术创新提高水资源利用效率，增强供水保障韧性与防控安全风险的防控能力，为 SDG 6落地提供硬核技术支撑。第三，以多元合作凝聚水安全合力。国际社会应加大对发展中国家水领域的资金、技术和能力建设的支持，创新融资机制，发挥多边开发银行等国际金融机构的作用，搭建知识共享平台，助力发展中国家更好应对水安全挑战。同时，水安全目标与其他可持续发展目标密不可分，需协同推进。一是年度 SDG 7发展节水型清洁能源，二是对接 SDG 9建设兼具气候韧性的水利设施，三是融入 SDG 11将水系统安全纳入城市规划，建设海绵城市与循环型社区。这一切最终都依赖 SDG 17倡导的坚固、务实、包容的全球合作。中方愿与各方一道，将上述建议转化为共同行动，携手加速实现可持续发展目标，开创亚太可持续发展的美好未来。谢谢。
Thank you, distinguished delegate from China. I invite the distinguished delegate from Kiribati to be followed by distinguished delegate from Russian Federation. May I have the floor?
Mary, Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Mary and warm greetings from the government and people of Kiribati. I would like to join early speakers in congratulating UN ESCAP for the excellent organization of this meeting. The 2030 Agenda remains a critical framework guiding our national development priorities as reflected in the Kiribati Development Plan. Kiribati acknowledges the importance of the VNR as a platform to access progress in accelerating SDG implementation and is privileged to present its second VNR this year. Kiribati is geographically fragmented with 33 islands dispersed over a vast ocean, and our islands rise on average only at 2 meters above sea level, making them among the most vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise. This reflects the structural and economic challenges that shape the implementation of the SDGs in countries like Kiribati. Kiribati continues to face limitations in statistical caps and financial resources constraints, which affect our ability to fully implement and monitor our reports on our SDG progress. The goals under review remain priority areas for Kiribati, especially access to clean water and infrastructure. Access to water and safe and reliable water remains a challenge due to limited freshwater resources. Water and sanitation investment in Kiribati focuses on climate resilient infrastructure to combat severe water scarcity. This investment includes enhancing monitoring and protecting groundwater lands, as well as installing desalination units in combat droughts. The government has made progress also investing in climate resilience and digital infrastructure to strengthen resilience, improve interconnectivity, and enhance service delivery for our outer island communities across Kiribati. Despite this progress, the lack of enabling environment and physical space remains a significant challenge. Our remoteness and dispersed geography result in high transportation and service delivery costs, further compounded by inflation, economic shocks, and increasing climate impact. Kiribati looks forward to the continued support of the Forum in promoting sustainable financing partnerships and strengthening cooperation to advance targeted support to access to clean water and sustainable infrastructure. We also call on the Forum to recognize the unique and special challenges faced by small island developing states like Kiribati. In closing, Kiribati reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the 2030 Agenda and looks forward to continued collaboration with our partners. Kamraba, and thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Kiribati. I invite the distinguished delegate from Russian Federation to be followed by the distinguished delegates. APR SEM collective statement.
Благодарю, уважаемая госпожа председатель, уважаемые делегаты. Российская Федерация относится к наиболее обеспеченным водными ресурсами странам мира. В России более 2,8 миллионов рек общей длиной 12,4 миллиона километров. Так называемых больших рек в России 241. Наиболее полноводными являются Енисей, Лена, Обь, Амур и Волга. Озер 2,7 миллионов. Крупнейшее озеро – Каспийское море. Далее Байкал, Ладожское, Онежское и Таймыр. Болота занимают 1,5 миллиона квадратных километров. Больше всего заболоченных земель находится в лесном фонде – порядок 1 миллиона квадратных километров. Также в нашей стране сосредоточены крупные запасы пресной воды. В целях достижения ЦУР-6 мы применяем комплексный подход, направленный на межведомственное взаимодействие ответственных органов, обеспечивающих надлежащее управление водными ресурсами на всех уровнях, а также охрану и восстановление связанных с водой экосистем, в том числе гор, лесов, водно-болотных угодий, рек и озер. По поручению президента Российской Федерации Владимира Владимировича Путина в России реализуется национальный проект «Экологическое благополучие», в в состав которого входит ключевой водный проект, федеральный проект «Вода России». Федеральный проект направлен на улучшение экологического состояния водных объектов, в том числе за счет снижения объемов сброса неочищенных сточных вод. К 2030 году мы планируем снизить объем неочищенных сточных вод до 9,2 миллиардов кубометров, а также создать комфортные условия проживания вблизи водных объектов для 23,2 миллионов человек. Среди ключевых мероприятий проекта можем отметить реконструкцию и строительство очистных сооружений, в том числе на Байкальской природной территории, улучшение экологического состояния гидрографической сети водотоков, водоемов, улучшение экологического состояния озер и водохранилищ путем проведения мероприятий по расчистке от древесного хлама и мусора, проведение мероприятий просветительского характера, в том числе по очистке от мусора берегов водных объектов в целях формирования осознанного отношения к природе и бережного отношения к водным ресурсам. При этом с 2019 по 2024 год в рамках мероприятий по оздоровлению реки Волга и обеспечению устойчивого функционирования водохозяйственного комплекса Нижней Волги введено в эксплуатацию 82 водопропускных сооружения, восстановлено 28 140 гектар водных объектов Нижней Волги. Это позволило повысить водообеспеченность населения и хозяйств субъектов Российской Федерации и создать необходимые условия для ведения сельского хозяйства. Наряду с этим строились и реконструировались очистные сооружения, в результате чего мы снизили объем загрязненных сточных вод в реку Волга практически в 2 раза. Российская Федерация готова к открытому взаимодействию в целях обмена опытом в сфере управления водными ресурсами и участию в совместных усилиях по обеспечению всеобщего доступа к воде и санитарной инфраструктуре. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you, distinguished delegate, Russian Federation. I now invite the distinguished delegate from representing APRCSM to be followed by distinguished delegates from Nepal. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I am Renuka speaking on behalf of APRSM. As we review the SDG progress at this APFSD, it presents a blank picture for both people and the planet. The region is far off track on all the goals, likely to miss on 88% on the targets by 2030 and will not be able to achieve the SDG until 2062. Without factoring in the emergent challenges, the crises are compounded by the role of parallel institutions such as the IMF World Bank, with its structural adjustment programs, with WTO pushing for liberalization, privatization, and deregulation at the expenses of state policy, fiscal space, labor, and environmental standards. In the absence of clear accountability mechanism, as a collective civil society of region from the 17 constituencies and 5 sub-regions, we demand the first, ensure the meaningful integration of civil society and marginalize the group in the planning, implementation, and review of the SDGs in line with the leave no one behind principle. Second, mobilize the political will on addressing the systematic barriers, especially international financial and trade architecture reform to catalyze the genuine transformation. Third, enact the binding mechanism on debt resolution, climate financing, military spending, tax justice, corporate accountability, biodiversity loss, and pollution. As the CSOs and the people organization in the Asia Pacific, we call on this forum to uphold the people's voices in shaping the agenda of our future. Development justice anchors the SDG in fairness, accountability, and people's lived realities, addressing the root causes rather than the symptoms. To truly deliver on the goals, governments and the partners must embrace the development justice as a guiding framework for action. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate representing APRSM. I invite the distinguished delegate from Nepal to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Armenia. You may have the floor, Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Nepal stands today at a pivotal juncture in its sustainable development journey. Our third voluntary national review shows that Nepal has achieved 58.6% of its SDGs target against 2022 milestone and 41.7% to progress towards 2020 targets. However, at the current pace, Nepal is projected to achieve only about 60.5% of its target by 2030. Nepal has made encouraging progress towards Goal 6 on clean water and sanitation. As of 2022, about 96% of households have access to basic drinking water, and about 95% have access to basic sanitation facilities, which is exceeding the national targets. However, further investment in water quality, wastewater treatment, climate resilient water system, especially in rural and remote areas, is needed. Under Goal 7 on affordable and clean energy, Nepal has made remarkable strides. Access to electricity has reached 95% of its population, surpassing the national target, supported by Nepal's strong progress in renewable energy, particularly hydropower. However, per capita electricity consumption remains at about 465 kilowatt hour. Progress towards Goal 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure remains moderate. While manufacturing employment has remained at around 15% of the total employment, the sector's contribution to GDP remains low at 5.2%. Addressing the infrastructure gaps, promoting digital connectivity, supporting innovation, and strengthening the industrial competitiveness remains national priorities under the Nepal's 16th periodic plan. Nepal has made moderate progress under Goal 11 on sustainable cities and communities. The number of the people living in unsafe housing and slums has declined significantly. Disaster reduction efforts have also significantly reduced disaster-affected population. However, rapid urbanization, air pollution, and infrastructure gap continue to pose the major challenge. Under Goal 17 on global partnership, Nepal recognized the international cooperation remains indispensable. 4G users have increased to over 80%, and the fixed broadband users reached about 46%, which strengthens the digital inclusion and connectivity. As a climate vulnerable mountainous country, Nepal calls for the greater global solidarity to support resilient infrastructure, clean energy transition, sustainable urban development, and sustainable climate finance modality to avoid the climate debt trap. Nepal remains fully committed to accelerating the progress and working with the regional and global partners to achieve the SDGs and ensure a sustainable and prosperous future for all. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Nepal. I invite the distinguished delegate from Armenia to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Tajikistan.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. As a landlocked developing country, Armenia is acutely aware of the structural challenges that constrain connectivity, increase transport costs, and heighten vulnerability to external shocks. These realities reinforce our commitment to resilient infrastructure, regional cooperation, and sustainable resource management as essential pillars of the 2030 agenda. The 2025 Sustainable Development Report indicates that Armenia has made moderate progress towards reaching the targets of 2030 agenda with a rank of 50 out of 167 countries. Around 45 of target indicators were achieved or on track. 29% showed limited advancement, while performance regrets for 26 of indicators. With a score of 47.3, Armenia showed as the second fastest SDG growth among Eastern European and Central Asian countries, and the fastest SDG improvement among upper middle income countries. In line with our commitment to evidence-based policymaking, we continue to strengthen SDG monitoring through the National SDG Data Platform. As of 2026-2025, Armenia reports on the majority of global SDG indicators, including full reporting under Goal 7 and substantial coverage under Goal 6. This progress enhances transparency, accountability, and informed decision-making. In light of the growing water scarcity as a result of the climate change, Armenia continues to improve integrated water resource management, modernize infrastructure, and expand access to safe water and sanitation services, with particular attention to rural communities. Sustainable watershed management and ecosystem restoration remain central to safeguarding access to water in the country. We mark an important important milestone with the launch of the National SDG 7 Roadmap in 2025. This roadmap strengthens our commitment to renewable energy expansion, energy efficiency improvement, and regional electricity cooperation. These efforts contribute to energy security, emission reduction, and green economic growth. Armenia advances energy efficiency, urban development, disaster risk reduction, and sustainable public infrastructure. Local energy efficiency initiatives demonstrate the integration of climate action, biodiversity protection, and social inclusion at the community level. Armenia will be hosting the UN Biodiversity Conference in October 2026. COP17 will be crucial in terms of global review of the collective progress in implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and advancing nature-positive development pathways. Biodiversity protection, ecosystem restoration, and sustainable land use are directly linked to achieving goals 6, 11, and 17, and to strengthening regional environmental cooperation. Partnership remains central to our progress. Adoption of the new Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework and launch of the Joint Fund Program with UN agencies to unlock sustainable finance for climate-smart and nutrition-sensitive food system marked a strengthened cooperation with the UN. Inclusive regional platforms such as Yerevan Dialogue also foster multilateral cooperation for sustainable development, climate action, and green transition. Yerevan Dialogue, which will be held this year in May, provides an important opportunity to advance regional partnership, exchange of best practices, strengthen policy coordination. Ladies and gentlemen, while tangible progress has been achieved, the regional review highlights persistent financing gaps, technological needs, and structural vulnerabilities, particularly for landlocked developing countries. Accelerating SDG implementation requires predictable financing, strengthened regional connectivity, technology transfer, capacity building, and enhanced multilateral cooperation with a focus on the country's
Kindly
special
wrap up,
situations.
please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished delegate from Tajikistan,
Thank you, Chair.
from Armenia, sorry. And I invite the distinguished delegate from Turkestan to be followed by a distinguished delegate from Thailand.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Tajikistan has committed to implementing the SDGs and has integrated them into its national development strategies. Tajikistan aligned the SDG with its strategic goals and National Development Strategy 2030, adapting global goals to national priorities such as ensuring energy independence, providing food security, breaking the communication deadlock, and accelerating industrialization. Our focus lies in improving connectivity, particularly in the areas of transport and energy infrastructure, and in expanding sub-regional and regional trade, as these are crucial for achieving our collective development goals. Energy security and sustainability are central to Tajikistan development vision. More than 98% of our electricity is generated from renewable hydropower, placing Tajikistan among the leading countries globally in green energy production. Major hydropower projects are strengthening domestic energy reliability, reducing winter shortages, and creating opportunities for electricity exports to neighboring countries. Recognizing that infrastructure is the backbone of development, Tajikistan has prioritized modernization of transport, communications, and industrial capacity. Significant investments in roads, tunnels, and regional transport corridors have improved connectivity within the country and strengthened trade links across Central Asia. Partnership remains the cornerstone of our progress. Tajikistan actively cooperates with United Nations agencies, international financial institutions, regional organizations, and bilateral partners. Tajikistan has long been a leader in advancing sustainable development management. Driven by our abundant freshwater resources, we have actively promoted international water initiatives and championed efforts to achieve Sustainable Development Goals 6. Despite our commitment, significant financial investment are needed to meet water-related goals through our leadership in the International Decade for Action, Water for Sustainable Development 2018-2028, the Dushanbe Water Process, and the host of the 2028 UN Water Conference. Tajikistan remains dedicated to advocating for increased global financial support to bridge the financing gap and achieve SDG 6 actively. As co-facilitator of UNG Resolution International Water Action Decade and host of the first high-level international conference on the International Decade for Action Water for Sustainable Development 2018-2028 to be held in to be held on 25th, 28th of May 2026. Tajikistan invites you all to Dushanbe to participate in this upcoming important event and to continue close cooperation on accelerating the achievement of SDG with the partners and stakeholders at the regional and international levels. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Tajikistan. I invite the distinguished delegate from Thailand to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Malaysia. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the outset, I wish to thank the rapporteurs for their summaries. Thailand reaffirms our strong commitment to the SDGs and to advancing regional cooperation for sustainable development in the Asia-Pacific region. And to accelerate progress towards 2030, we attach great importance to driving the SDGs through inclusive, data-driven, and evidence-based solutions that inform policy and drive action on the ground. Madam Chair, in reviewing progress on SDGs 6, 7, 9, and 11, Thailand continues to achieve tangible and measurable progress across several priority areas. On SDG 6, access to safe drinking water has reached 99.6% of the population. Most households now have access to adequate sanitation facilities and basic hand washing services, reflecting sustained public investment and effective service delivery that have reduced disparities nationwide. We have also strengthened institutional arrangements for water governance to better align water resource management, planning, and disaster preparedness across sectors. Furthermore, we look forward to discussions at the UN Water Conference at the end of this year. On SDG 7, Thailand has achieved near universal access to electricity through sustained infrastructure investment and nationwide service expansion, while advancing energy efficiency and the transition to low-carbon development to meet national clean energy targets. Progress on SDG 9 is being advanced through strengthened infrastructure and enhanced regional connectivity, particularly in transport and trade facilitation. We also prioritize the strengthening of industrial resilience and adaptability and the promotion of research and innovation to support sustainable and inclusive long-term growth. On SDG 11, Thailand has made steady progress in advancing inclusive and resilient urban development. Urban environmental management, particularly in solid waste treatment and recycling, have also contributed to more sustainable cities. But without strong partnerships, progress cannot be sustained. Looking ahead, strengthening partnerships and deepening regional cooperation will be key to further advance SDG implementation in the area and beyond. SDG 17 thus serves as the practical engine that enables these efforts, ensuring that development projects are adequately financed and that implementation is effectively coordinated. In closing, Thailand values our partnerships with the UN system and member states and remains committed to strengthening cooperation, including through South-South and triangular cooperation, while advancing SDG localization to ensure that global commitments translate into local action and that no one is left behind. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We would like to remind all delegates that the interpreters are doing their best and to keep up, and it would be helpful to speak at a moderate speed.
My goodness.
I invite the distinguished delegate from Malaysia to be followed by the distinguished delegates from UCLG.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Excellencies and distinguished delegates. Malaysia remains committed to ensuring access to clean water and sanitization for all in line with SDG 6. As of 2024, water supply coverage is at 97%. Meanwhile, sewerage services covered 87.2% in the main cities. Under the 13 Malaysia Plan 2026-2030 and the Water Sector Transformation Roadmap 2040, efforts are intensified to ensure all Malaysians have access to a reliable, affordable, and high-quality water supply. As a leader in the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, Malaysia reaffirms its commitment to SDG 7. Guided by the National Energy Transition Roadmap and the National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, Malaysia is intensifying efforts to scale up the contribution of renewable energy to 70% by 2050. To date, Malaysia has successfully delivered substantial electricity savings and reduction in national carbon footprint. Malaysia advances its SDG 9 through the adoption of the new Industrial Master Plan 2030, a key component of the Madani economy framework, by upgrading infrastructure, promoting green technology, and enhancing industrial competitiveness. Malaysia has achieved significant milestones in mitigating climate change and uplifting social well-being in cities under SDG 11 by mobilizing 83 local authorities to prepare VLRs. The Circular Economy Blueprint for Solid Waste in Malaysia 2025-2035 was launched to transition waste management towards circular and waste-to-energy models. Malaysia has also successfully delivered 200 green spaces nationwide within 2 years under the Madani Recreational Parks Initiative. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, Malaysia continues to demonstrate its successes in aligning with SDG 17. Through a successful 2025 ASEAN Chairmanship, South-South cooperation under the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Programme and leadership in data transparency. At the same time, Malaysia recognizes the role of localizing sustainable development in line with the Kuala Lumpur Sustainable Declaration on Localizing ASEAN Community Vision 2045. Malaysia aspires to accelerate SDG progress towards the 2030 agenda, and Malaysia calls upon the United Nations to support ongoing efforts to scale up community-driven solutions, providing technical expertise to decarbonize industries, and promoting partnerships that integrate local SMEs into global green and digital value chains. We also seek collaborative efforts to replicate nature-based climate adaptation models to safeguard vulnerable coastal and urban populations. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Malaysia. I invite distinguished delegate from UCLG to be followed by distinguished delegates from Australia. Please take the floor.
Thank you for the opportunity to take the floor. I am Councilor Elmer Datuin of Baguio City, Philippines, and with the Philippine Councilors League, and I speak on behalf of the organized constituency of local authorities represented by the Asia Pacific Local Government Coordinating Body and coordinated by the United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific. An estimated 65% of the SDGs target cannot be reached without local and regional governments. In over 10 years since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda, there has been progress, but it is not enough. On SDG 6, we are working towards universal access to safely manage drinking water and sanitation services. Challenges remain in data collection and the maintenance of water quality, wastewater treatment capacity, and equitable water and sanitation access, requiring infrastructure investment and maintenance in urban and rural areas. We are alarmed by the UN report on global water bankruptcy and call for holistic and sustainable water governance to ensure the right to clean and safe water, specifically for vulnerable urban communities and informal settlements. On SDG 7, we are striving for affordable and clean energy. However, there are observed gaps in household-level data that could provide insights into tailored initiatives which may serve as catalysts for local green jobs and economic resilience. On SDG 9, we are digitalizing services to enhance public service delivery, transparency, and accountability. The digital divide, particularly internal access and digital literacy in urban and rural areas, need to be addressed through infrastructure investment and targeted education initiatives. On SDG 11, we are responding to the imperative need of this rapidly urbanizing region through transit-oriented development and social housing projects. Increased waste generation continues to be a challenge despite community-level action, requiring a transboundary approach and strengthened policies on extended producer responsibility. On SDG 17, local and regional governments remain true to people-centered and planet-centered development through inclusive and participatory local governance, ensuring the meaningful engagement of our youth, civil society, the private sector, and other key community stakeholders. There is a need to strengthen urban governance to enable local resource mobilization for SDGs as well as to enhance financing mechanisms, strategic partnership, and intergovernmental support. To further support SDG achievements in the region, the LRG constituency recommends: 1. Alignment of multi-level government development priorities with adequate resource allocation. Second, enhancement of data system reflecting multi-level indicators with shared government access for responsive, data-driven, caring governance and evidence-based policymaking. Third, institutionalization of the LRG engagement in national SDGs mechanism to sustain multi-level governance. Fourth, enhancement of access to local finance for LRGs. And 5, strengthen the Asia-Pacific Local Government Coordinating Body platform as a knowledge and learning hub for LRGs. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from UCLG. I invite the distinguished delegate from Australia to be followed by a video on UN Habitat. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Clean water and sanitation, SDG 6, goes to the heart of sustainable development. Secure, reliable and safely managed water is fundamental. Fundamental to public health, to food security, to climate resilience, and to the dignity and well-being of every community. As the driest inhabited continent facing prolonged droughts regularly, Australia understands these challenges deeply. At home, we are strengthening the sustainable management of our water resources by reforming and implementing the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, expanding data collection to cover water service providers of all sizes, investing in long-term water security through the National Water Grid. But Southeast Asia and the Pacific also face challenges to achieving SDG 6, and this is where Australia builds our strongest partnerships. In small island states like those in the Pacific, acute water vulnerabilities continue to pose challenges which are being exacerbated by climate change. Salinisation of fresh water, increasingly variable rainfall, damage to water infrastructure from extreme weather, limited storage capacity, and the tyranny of scale all impose real constraints. Australia works with Pacific partners to deliver climate-resilient water and sanitation, manage water resources, build infrastructure, and promote nature-based solutions. As a key donor and partner in the Mekong region, Australia supports the Mekong River Commission through our $200 million Mekong-Australia partnership. In Thailand, we are working with the Royal Irrigation Department to improve water quality in reservoirs. In Laos, we have a focus on managing groundwater. And as part of our Mekong-Australia partnership, we have also been working with the FAO to reduce water scarcity by improving water accounting for sustainable water allocation. Excellencies and delegates, delivering the SDG 6 in this final stretch demands not only renewed effort, but renewed cooperation. First, we must invest in resilient water infrastructure. Mobilising private capital, de-risking investments, and strengthening institutional capabilities are essential. Second, we must embed inclusive, locally led approaches. Sustainable water management requires voices from women, Indigenous peoples, local government, and civil society. The best solutions will always be built from the ground up. Australia stands ready to contribute to dialogues at the upcoming UN Water Conference in December, and this will be a key opportunity to accelerate concrete actions globally towards achieving SDG 6. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Australia. I now ask all of us to pay attention to the video showing on the screen.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Sawadika. Warm greetings to all of you. While I cannot join you in person in Bangkok for the 13th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, I am honored to address you virtually. This year, the Forum is reviewing progress on 5 interconnected Sustainable Development Goals, 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. At UN Habitat, we view SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities as the docking station for all the Sustainable Development Goals. Cities are essential to unlocking progress on water, energy, and infrastructure. One of the drivers to ensure this is access to adequate and affordable housing and basic services. Yet today, we face a global housing crisis. Nearly 3 billion people lack adequate housing, and more than 1 billion live in informal settlements and slums. The Asia-Pacific region is no exception. 53% of its population already lives in urban areas, and by 2030, this number is expected to reach 3.5 billion people. Despite progress, significant challenges remain, including affordability constraints, rising inequality, and climate vulnerability, particularly in small island developing states. Success across the Sustainable Development Goals depends on addressing these crises. Access to water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, and resilient infrastructure cannot be separated from the provision of adequate housing. This requires the coordinated action and partnerships envisioned under SDG 17. Looking ahead, there are important opportunities to advance these integrated solutions, including the midterm review of the New Urban Agenda and the upcoming high-level political forum in July this year. UN Habitat is working with a wide range of stakeholders to identify solutions and common approaches. Discussions on the New Urban Agenda and SDG 11 will also be at the center of the 13th session of the World Urban Forum, which will take place in Baku, Azerbaijan this May. The forum will position housing as a primary driver of global progress in implementing the New Urban Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, under the theme Housing the World, Safe and Resilient Cities and Communities. I hope to see you in Baku. Thank you very much. Kop Kumka.
Distinguished delegates and participants, in the interest of time, we will now move on to the sub-agenda item 4B. For delegates who still wish to speak under 4A, we will accommodate the request in the time allotted for statements in sub-agenda item 4B if time allows. For the reporting and posting of statements online, the Secretariat will note the corresponding sub-agenda item you have indicated on the statement request. Let us now continue with sub-agenda item 4B, follow-up on the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. This sub-agenda item focuses on regional follow-up to the outcomes of the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, including the Seville Commitment, and provides an opportunity for the forum to reflect on progress, challenges, and priorities for financing sustainable development in the Asia-Pacific region. The discussion under this sub-item draw in particular on the outcomes of the Financing Sustainable Development Roundtable convened during this forum. The roundtable examined regional perspectives across key action areas identified in the Seville Commitment, including domestic and international private business and finance, international trade as an engine for development, international financial architecture and systematic issues, and data monitoring and follow-up. Through this discussion, the forum aims to identify region-specific priorities and policy measures that can strengthen implementation of the financing for development outcomes and inform Asia Pacific contribution to global follow-up processes, including the Economic and Social Council Forum on Financing for Development and the High-Level Political Forum. I am pleased to invite Ms. Vishka Amara Sekere, Additional Director General, Department of External Resources, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Sri Lanka, to deliver a summary of the roundtable discussions and identified priorities. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The roundtable on the follow-up on the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development was convened at the 13th session of the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development by the Macroeconomic Policy and Financing for Development Division of ESCAP in partnership with IFAD, ILO, UNDP, UNEP, UNICEF, UNFPA, and UNOPS under the overall coordination of UNESCAP. As articulated in paragraph 65 of Severe Commitment, ESCAP and other regional economic commissions are encouraged to undertake regional follow-up processes as part of the regional forums on sustainable development, as is happening today. The roundtable discussed 4 priority areas in line with the 4 areas of the severe commitment to be discussed at the forthcoming ECOSOC FFD forum. First, for domestic and international private business and finance, participants emphasized the importance of deepening capital markets and stronger regulatory frameworks that integrate sustainability and gender equality aspects. Expansion of affordable digital finance and financial inclusion for MSMEs, women-led businesses, and vulnerable communities is also essential. Blended financing mechanisms should be strengthened along with enhanced regional cooperation and the alignment of sustainability standards. Second, discussion on trade as an engine for development highlighted the importance of people-centered and resilient trade architecture that is representative of women, civil society, MSMEs, persons with disabilities, and indigenous groups. This is important given the growing global trade policy uncertainty. Furthermore, labor protection and standards are needed to ensure that trade and industrial competition is fair. Additionally, digitalization of trade facilitation can help bring down costs supported by proper data governance. Third, it was noted that structural weaknesses and systemic issues in the international financial architecture disproportionately affect Asia-Pacific developing countries as reflected in capital outflows and high borrowing costs. Equitable and inclusive governance reforms strengthened regional financial cooperation and debt sustainability frameworks that prioritize financial stability, employment, and human development are needed in this regard. Furthermore, appropriate risk mitigation mechanisms may help channel FDI toward productive capacity and sustainable development for all, while strategic positioning of domestic resources can attract blended finance. Finally, strengthened national statistical systems are essential for effective data monitoring and follow-up. The capacity of national statistical officers, linkage of statistics to national planning, and empowerment of local governments to use community-level data are priorities to ensure that no one is left behind. Access and use of available and credible data, including from private sector and administrative sources, through one data platforms, interagency collaboration, and innovative legal frameworks should be maximized. The roundtable discussion also highlighted the role of predictable and adequate international support, strengthened multilateral and regional cooperation, policy coherence, and inclusive multi-stakeholder partnerships to ensure effective implementation of the severe commitment. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to invite the distinguished delegates to intervene on agenda item 4, sub-item B, follow up on the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. I will open the floor to statements from delegates in the speaking order as received from the Secretariat. I kindly remind delegates to limit their statement to no longer than 3 minutes length to allow all delegates the opportunity to speak. I recognize the distinguished delegate from New Zealand, to be followed by the distinguished delegates from China. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand remains committed to the effective implementation of the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals. The theme of this year's conference, Transformative, Equitable, Innovative and Coordinated Actions for the 2030 Agenda and its SDGs for Sustainable Future for All, is particularly relevant in 2026. New Zealand welcomed the adoption of the Compromiso de Seville, the outcome document of last year's 4th International Financing for Development Conference. It highlighted a continuing global commitment to collectively strengthen development financing. Across the wide-ranging agenda of the Compromiso de Seville, New Zealand attaches particular priority to ongoing progress on free trade as a cornerstone of prosperity for New Zealand, as it is for many countries. At this time of global economic turmoil, it is important both for the developed and developing countries that we commit to protecting the rules-based trading system. Advancing the interests of small island developing states is also a central part of New Zealand's foreign policy. Our Pacific neighbours, all of whom are SIDS, are among our closest partners and friends, so we are deeply invested in development progress and trends in the Pacific sub-region. We call for all international partners working in the Pacific to take a partner-led approach to the planning and delivery of their development assistance. Pacific countries consistently emphasise that development assistance must be tailored to their unique circumstances, vulnerabilities and opportunities as SIDS and large ocean states. In particular, assistance should be well coordinated and wherever possible work through and support the capacity of Pacific government systems to support Pacific countries to strengthen their public service delivery. This is without doubt a challenging moment for multilateral cooperation. Funding cuts in the UN development system will have real-world impacts. There are features of the multilateral system that are ripe for reform, notably fragmentation and the way in which member states create and review mandates, which have grown as a problem over the past decade. New Zealand is therefore engaging actively in the UN80 reform process. UN80 presents an opportunity not only to rationalise but to strengthen the system's coherence and effectiveness and ultimately its credibility and legitimacy across all 3 pillars of the UN. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from New Zealand. I invite the distinguished delegate from China to be followed by the distinguished delegates from United Kingdom. Please.
谢谢主席女士，很荣幸出席本次会议。2024年6月，中国国家主席习近平向联合国贸易和发展会议成立60周年庆祝活动开幕式发表视频致辞，强调中国将积极扩大从其他发展中国家的进口，加强贸易、投资、发展合作， 助力落实联合国2030年可持续发展议程。当前，2030年可持续发展议程正处关键阶段，面对每年超过4万亿美元的巨大筹资缺口，国际社会应携手加快行动。我围绕4大重点领域分享中方看法。第一，私营企业和金融方面应发挥混合融资的杠杆效应。中方设立40亿美元全球发展和南南合作基金，推出100亿美元专项资金，以支持1800多个项目。我们愿与亚太各国深化区域可持续投资合作，促进私营部门参与绿色基础设施建设，共享产业园区开发经验，帮助企业降低成本，形成集群效应。第二，国际贸易方面，应坚决反对单边主义和保护主义，维护以世贸组织为核心的多边贸易体制。中国连续8年举办进口博览会，为发展中国家产品进入中国市场创造机会。这种以开放促发展的模式值得推广。第三，国际金融架构和债务可持续性方面，应提升发展中国家的话语权。中方支持塞维利亚债务论坛机制，呼吁发达国家足额履行官方发展援助承诺和气候资金义务。国际金融机构加大优惠贷款力度，私人债权人公平分担减债责任。第四，数据监测和统计体系方面，应加强亚太能力建设合作。中国杭州的联合国大数据全球平台区域中心积极推进统计创新。我们愿与各国共建面向未来有韧性的统计系统。目前，全球发展倡议已吸引130多个国家和国际组织参与。未来5年是中国的15-5时期，中国将积极落实全球发展倡议，与各国共同推进塞维利亚承诺落地见效，共建繁荣、包容、可持续的亚太和世界。谢谢。
Thank you, distinguished delegate from China. I invite the distinguished delegate from Thailand to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Russian Federation. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the outset, I'd like to thank Director General Amara Segere for the summary of the roundtable, which we find useful in channeling the Asia-Pacific perspectives into the annual ECOSOC Forum on the FFD follow-up. Financing challenges are at the heart of the SDGs implementation. However, the Sevilla commitment provides a ray of hope in bridging the annual $4.2 trillion financing gap for SDG. Allow me to highlight 4 priority areas which Thailand is translating global commitments into concrete actions. First, scaling up green and sustainable finance. Thailand was the first country in Southeast Asia to launch the Sustainability-Linked Bonds, or SLB, in 2021 to expand the green bond market and encourage green investments. Today, the value of the bond has reached $8.9 million, and one of our models received the Finance Asia Achievement Awards 2025 for Best Sustainable Finance Deal. Furthermore, earlier this month, the Thai Cabinet approved carbon credits to be used as reference assets in Thailand Futures Exchange. This will upgrade Thailand's financial infrastructure in line with global trends and preparing the country to fully support the green economy. Second, combating illicit financial flows relating to online scams. Recognizing that encountering such crime requires a whole-of-system approach, Thailand co-hosted the International Conference on the Global Partnership Against Online Scams with UNODC last December. The Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development would be another platform to also discuss this issue. Third, reforming the international financial architecture. This October, we will host the 2026 IMF World Bank Group annual meetings, which Thailand looks forward to strengthening the collective voice and representation of the Asia-Pacific developing countries in international financial institutions. Last but not least, forging stronger partnerships. Thailand is strengthening cooperation both domestically, in particular with the private sector, and internationally. With less than 5 years until 2030, coordinated action is a must. Thailand stands ready to work with all stakeholders to fulfill the promise of Sabia for a sustainable and equitable world for all. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Thailand. I invite the distinguished delegate from Russian Federation to be followed by APRSM, Women Constituency. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As a representative of the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to participate in this remarkable event. So, in terms of promoting sustainable development, the Bank of Russia has identified 3 priority areas: facilitating the development of the sustainable finance market, managing climate, environmental, social, and governance risks as part of macro and macroprudential supervision, and integrating policies contributing to the achievements of SDGs into the Bank of Russia's operations. The Russian sustainable taxonomy serves as a basis for labeling sustainable financial instruments, namely bonds and loans. It includes criteria for social, green, and transition products. Moreover, the Bank of Russia regulations require that sustainability bonds must be verified by the issuer both before and after the issue. In 2025, the Bank of Russia expanded the scope of its program for risk-focused incentive-based regulation to include sustainable development products. The intentions are applied to bonds and loans aimed at financing of priority sustainable projects as defined in the national taxonomy. Reduction in the risk weight depends on the quality of the finance projects and can be between 10% and 50%. In particular, incentives apply to green projects in waste management, manufacturing, energy sector, restoration of landscapes and rivers, transport and industrial machinery, water supply and sanitation, and construction. In addition, 3 areas of transition projects were also selected for the application of incentives: waste management, manufacturing, and energy. Overall, this program will allow Russian credit institutions to finance more green and transition projects by reducing their capital burden. In 2025, the volume of the sustainable development bond market in Russia expanded by 22% year-over-year. Besides, the Bank of Russia intends to implement machine-readable XBRL sustainable development disclosure requirements for major securities issuers. Voluntary implementation will be planned for 2026, and mandatory disclosure will be implemented starting from 2027. In conclusion, I would like to note that in terms of its operations, the Bank of Russia strives to contribute to 10 out of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Our operational goals for the period of up to 2030 are decarbonization of operations, ensuring decent working conditions and providing opportunities for development of human capital, and working on a non-financial reporting system in the Bank of Russia and its subsidiaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Distinguished delegate from Russian Federation. I invite the distinguished delegate from APR-SIM to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I deliver this statement on behalf of APRCM Women's Constituency. We would like to express our concern particularly on the outcomes and implementation of the Compromiso de Sevilla. The Compromiso de Sevilla presents a corporate-first narrative that legitimizes the role of private sector in mobilizing the development finance. It provides access and power to international financial institutions and big economies to maneuver the reforms in the international financial architecture. It fails to call out the increasing military expenditure, anti-people and anti-gender policies, and divestment in public financing for development. Across region, there is notable increase in military spending alongside increasing austerity measures on basic social services, which detrimentally affect women and girls and marginalized segments of the society.
The responsibility for technological transfer, capacity building, governance, strengthening support from global north to south to attain the SDGs have largely been eliminated from the outcome document. To enable financing for development justice, we put forward the following recommendation. Establish a UN-led intergovernmental process on a global regulatory framework featuring a legally binding instrument on public-private partnership, blending finance, investment bonds for SDGs and other private finance instruments for their impacts on state policy and fiscal space, human rights, labor, and environmental standards, establish a comprehensive framework for international investment based on the principle of human rights, SDGs, core treaty, compatibility, replacing new liberal instruments like investor-state disputes settlement. It should be underpinned by cooperation, accountability, and transparency. It should also include a comprehensive review of the liberalization and deregulation measures, including structural adjustment program of the IMF and World Bank and new liberal trade regimes by the WTO. Ensure policy coherence across processes, especially the full scope review of SDG 17 mandated by GA Resolution 67 by 290, which is currently obscured in favor of FFD4 Roundtable. To ensure a holistic review of non-financial MOI. Finally, create an inclusive mechanism for meaningful civil society participation, formalizing substantive input and effective engagement in the planning, implementation, and review processes of the FFD4 World Social Summit, Development and Pact for the Future commitments to realize development justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate APR's Sam. I invite the distinguished delegate from Bangladesh to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bangladesh views the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development as an important milestone in strengthening the global financing architecture for sustainable and resilient development. The Asia-Pacific region has a vital role in translating global commitments into practical solutions. In line with the Sevilla commitment, Bangladesh underscores the need to mobilize sustainable finance, strengthen domestic resources mobilization, and enhance global cooperation to close the SDG financing gap. Madam Chair, Bangladesh welcomes the outcomes of FFD4 and underscores the importance of translating commitment into implementation. In the regional follow-up to Sevilla, we highlighted priority areas where ESCAP and member states can accelerate the progress. First, strengthening domestic resource mobilization remains central to sustainable financing. Bangladesh is advancing reform through improved tax administration, digitalization, and broader tax bases, supported by regional cooperation and peer learning across the Asia and Pacific. Second, enhancing access to concessional and climate finance remains critical. As one of the most climate-exposed nations, Bangladesh calls for simplified procedures, scaled-up adaptation finance, and operationalization of the loss and damage fund. Third, ensuring a smooth and development-oriented pathway towards sustainable LDG transition remains equally important. Bangladesh calls for continued international support measures and tailored financing solutions to safeguard development gains amid evolving economic and climate challenges. Fourth, revitalizing global partnership under SDG 17 remains essential. Bangladesh encourages collaboration to mobilize blended finance, promote responsible private sector engagement, and expand South-South and Triangle cooperation. National consultations ahead of FFD4 highlighted inclusive and gender-responsive financing to ensure development finance reaches vulnerable communities. Madam Chair, beyond these priorities, Bangladesh underscores the importance of advancing debt sustainability. We call for reform of the international financial architecture and expanded lending by multilateral development banks aligned with national SDG priorities. Regional platforms can complement global efforts by promoting debt transparency, knowledge sharing, and innovative financing solutions that enhance resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Bangladesh. I invite the distinguished delegate from Indonesia to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Pakistan. You may have
Thank
the
you,
floor.
Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will deliver agenda item 4A. Across Asia and the Pacific, the pathways of Goal 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17 increasingly intersect. While progress has been recorded in several areas, significant gaps remain across the regions, with uneven advancement among countries and within sectors. Water security is shaped by climate patterns and urban expansions. Energy transition influences industrial competitiveness and infrastructure resilience. Rapid urbanization tests government capacity and financing systems. Increasing exposure to climate and disaster risk compounds these infrastructures and urban vulnerabilities across the regions. Again, this backdrop, Indonesia highlights three considerations that are central to accelerating progress toward these 5 goals. First, progress depends on integrated action across goals. Clean energy transitions depend on resilient grids and sustainable financing. Sustainable cities rely on water security, reliable infrastructures, efficient transport systems, and inclusive industrial development. Partnerships under Goal 17 must ensure that policy ambitions is translated into actionable and scalable implementations. Without current alignment among planning, budgeting, and implementation frameworks, accelerations, effort risk, fragmentations, and limited impact. Second, financing remains the decisive factors in determining the pace and scale of implementations. Across the regions, widening financing gaps and growing fiscal pressures continue to constrain progress, particularly for infrastructure-intensive goals. Strengthening domestic resource mobilizations, expanding innovative financing instruments, and mobilizing private sector participations must therefore remain central to acceleration's efforts. Third, accelerations depend less on additional declarations and more on effective implementation and sustained delivery. This requires stronger collaborations across public and private sectors and across countries and regions to enhance institutional coordination, strengthen capacity, and support delivery at scale. Timely, reliable, and disaggregated data systems alongside expanded digital access are essential to guide policy adjustments, strengthen accountability, and improve regional transparency. Indonesia continues to integrate these priorities into our national planning, infrastructure investment, energy transitions, and urban development strategies guided by our National Medium-Term Development Plan 2025-2029 and aligned with our long vision toward 2045. Chair, we stand ready to strengthen collaborations, exchange practical experience, and contribute to coordinated regional solutions that translate shared priorities into measurable progress on goals 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Indonesia. I invite the distinguished delegate from Pakistan to be followed by distinguished delegates from Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The statement comes under Agenda Item 4A. Pakistan attaches high importance to Goals 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17 as foundational enablers of sustainable development, as progress in social sector depends directly on access to infrastructure, services, sustainable cities, and effective partnerships. Under Goal 6, Clean Water and Sanitation, Pakistan has made steady progress towards universal access. The proportion of the population using safely managed drinking water has increased from 93% to 94%, while safely managed sanitation improved from 73% to 83%. Integrated water resource management implementation has advanced from 50% in 2017 to 63% in 2023, reflecting continued effort to strengthen water governance and service delivery. Under Goal 7, affordable and clean energy access to electricity has expanded from 93% to 96.7% against a 2030 target of 97%. Reliance on clean fuels has risen significantly from 15% to 37%, while renewable energy share has increased to 47%, and installed renewable generation capacity has reached 2783 megawatt. Energy efficiency has also improved, demonstrating progress towards a cleaner and more reliable energy mix. Under Goal 9, Industry, Innovation and Infrastructure, Pakistan continues to strengthen connectivity and productive capacity. Passenger and freight transport volumes have increased substantially. Mobile network coverage has expanded to 87%, and the contribution of small-scale industry has improved to 18.2%. At the same time, the country recognizes the need to accelerate research and development investment and manufacturing growth to meet 2030 targets. Under Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, the share of population living in slums has declined from 60.5% to 56%. However, urban environmental challenges remain significant, with rising air pollution levels highlighting the urgency of sustainable urban planning, improved transport systems, and resilient infrastructure. Under Goal 17, Partnerships for the Goals, Pakistan is strengthening domestic resource mobilization and international cooperation. Government revenue stands at 11.4% of GDP, domestic tax financing at 56%, and remittances have increased to 7.86% of GDP. Expanding partnerships, investment flows, and technology cooperation will remain critical to achieving the SDGs. Pakistan believes progress across these goals must advance together. Water, energy, infrastructure, urban development, and partnerships form a single development ecosystem. Continued international cooperation, technology transfer, and adequate financing remain essential to accelerate implementation and ensure sustainable and inclusive development. I thank you all.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Pakistan. I invite the distinguished delegate from Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The promotion of the SDGs necessitates a multi-stakeholder approach, and Japan is implementing awareness-raising activities and various initiatives in close collaboration with a broad spectrum of stakeholders. On SDG 6, Japan has maintained high water quality through strong legal monitoring, advanced technologies, and coordinated river basin governance, while addressing remaining challenges such as lake pollution. Japan supports global water management through JICA, offering technical and financial cooperation in areas like integrated water resources management, water infrastructure, and disaster resilience. Japan actively contributes to global discussions, including the UN 2023 Water Conference and the IWA 50. On SDGs 9, Japan integrates hard and soft disaster resilience measures and increasingly uses digital technologies such as 3D risk modeling and drone logistics to strengthen national resilience and small city development. 2021 data shows that about half of Japan's CO2 emissions come from cities, including transport and household sectors. Smart city initiatives are therefore directly linked to achieving carbon neutrality. Japan promotes data-driven urban innovation domestically and expands smart city and renewable energy projects abroad, especially in ASEAN and in order to support the SDGs. Finally, on SDG 11, Japan promotes compact, human-centered urban planning supported by digital tools while ensuring that technology serves people through transparent, collaborative governance. Compact city development improves mobility, strengthens transport networks, and maintains access to essential services amid population decline. Digital tools such as IoT, 3D models, and AI-driven mobility and traffic management systems are being used to optimize infrastructure and service delivery under sound governance. Guided by Society 5.0 and its Development Cooperation Charter, Japan advances inclusive and sustainable urban development domestically and abroad and looks forward to hosting the APUF 9 in Yokohama in 2027. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from Japan. Distinguished delegates and participants, in the interest of time, we will now move on to sub-agenda item 4C. For delegates who still wish to speak under 4B, we will accommodate the request in the time allotted for statements in sub-agenda items 4C if time allows. For the reporting and posting of statements online, the Secretariat will note the corresponding sub-agenda item you have indicated on the statement request. As agreed with the APSD chair, I will now hand over chairing to Mr. Hussein Hussainov, advisor to the Minister of Economy and Secretary of the National Coordination Council on Sustainable Development, Azerbaijan, fellow vice chair of the 13 APFSD.
So the good news is that this is our last session, and I know everyone is a bit tired, and we promise to be more interesting than a cup of your coffee. Okay, let us continue with sub-item 4C, implementation of 2030 agenda at sub-regional level. The document relevant to this item is implementation of 2030 agenda for sustainable development at sub-regional level. The discussion under this item will take stock of key messages from the 5 sub-regional multi-stakeholders SDG forums that examine the challenges and opportunities facing the region in achieving SDG goals and shared experience and sub-regional perspectives. This session aims to identify ways to accelerate action to advance the full implementation of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. For the deliberation under this sub-item, I'm pleased to invite Mr. Gombal Basanjaf, Head of Subregional Office for East and Northeast Asia of ESCAP, who will moderate the discussion. May I invite Mr. Basanjaf and distinguished speakers to come to the rostrum and moderate the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, distinguished panelists and participants. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this crucial panel discussion, which centers on key efforts and strategies to ensure that no one is left behind in the journey toward sustainable development, particularly in the diverse subregion of Asia and the Pacific. We are honored to have representatives from the 5 ESCAP subregions ready to share insights about 2025 subregional SDG forums. They will provide valuable insights into the main features and outcomes of those events, highlighting where their respective subregions currently stand in terms of SDG implementation. This will give us a clear understanding of common challenges, innovative solutions, and opportunities for regional cooperation. Our discussion today will also align with the thematic focus of the high-level political forum and on SDG 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. These goals, essential to human development, environmental stewardship, and economic progress, require urgent attention and action if we are to achieve the 2030 Agenda. As we hear from our esteemed panelists, I encourage everyone to reflect on the importance of science and evidence-based approaches, inclusive governance, and meaningful cooperation across subregions to overcome persistent barriers. Together, let us explore innovative pathways for achieving a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Thank you very much to all participants for being us today. We will now proceed with our program by welcoming our first speaker. So it is my honor to invite Mr. Mungunsuk Pachulun to present Mungunsuk Pachulun, Director General of the Integrated Development Policy and Planning Department, Ministry of Economy and Development of Mongolia, who will present the outcomes of the Subregional Forum held in Mongolia last October. DJ Pachulun, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear participants, excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, allow me to highlight two key messages from our assessment of SDG progress in East and Northeast Asia in the 9th Subregional SDG Forum held in Ulaanbaatar last October. Progress across the subregion has been mixed. Strong performance is evident in quality education, reduced inequality, and sustainable city, while regression has occurred in industry, innovation and infrastructure, and responsible consumption and production. Debit sustainability and gaps in statistical legislation have also showed progress on Goal 17. However, data availability is notably straitened. Mongolia, China, Japan, and Republic of Korea exceed regional averages, with Mongolia surpassing 65%. This provides a critical foundation for evidence-based policy making. Countries have also demonstrated strong commitment through voluntary national reviews developed via inclusive multi-stakeholder processes involving governments, civil society, private sector, academia, and youth, strengthen national SDG ownership and dialogue. At the Ulaanbaatar Forum, several priorities emerged. Goal 6. While access to drinking water and sanitation has improved, gaps remain the water quality monitoring, wastewater treatment, and community engagement. A strong data system and integrated water governance are essential. Goal 7. Electricity access is near universal, but affordability, reliability, and clean cooking remains challenges, especially in remote areas. Renewable energy processes slow due to fossil fuel dependence, grid constraints, and limited storage. Goal 9. Innovation in digitalization, in decarbonization, and circular economy is growing. Yet SME, especially women and disability-owned businesses, face barriers in accessing in finance and markets. Strong public-private collaboration is needed. Goal 11, rapid urbanization is increasing housing shortages, inequality, and environmental pressure. Cities accounting for 70% of resource use and emissions. Priorities include strengthening local data system, modern housing, nature-based solution, and inclusive green urban planning. Goal 17. A strong partnership remains essential. Initiatives such as the Mongolian Scala program, Japanese SDG promoting headquarters, and China's Global Development Initiative demonstrated the value of coordinated action. However, widening financing gap requires expanded blended finance, sustainability bonds, and effective public-private partnership supported by transparency. Regional cooperation remains the most powerful lever to accelerate SDG progress. Shared challenges, including climate change, demographic shifts, land degradation, pollution, and inequality, requires collective action. Promising initiatives already exist. ESCAP's cooperation is strengthening statistical system and SDG monitoring capacity. Mongolia preparation for 2026 UNCCD Conference of the Parties demonstrate how regional collaboration can mobilize expertise, financing, and political commitment to address desertification and drought. Homegrown initiatives, including China's Global Development Initiative, Japanese SDG promoting headquarters, and Mongolian partnership with FAO and Green Climate Fund and UNDP highlight the impact of coordinated regional action. The message is clear. Accelerating SDG progress required stronger partnership, investment in governance and data, and deeper regional cooperation. While time is limited, with renewed commitment and inclusive collaboration, East and Northeast Asia can still achieve transformative progress. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG Mungunsuk, for your detailed remarks and for highlighting the regional priorities. Now, it's my honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Faiz Murshid Kazi, Ambassador and Permanent Representative to ESCAP of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, to present the key outcomes and the reflections from the South and Southwest Asia Subregional Forum. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it was our privilege from Bangladesh to participate in the 9th South and Southwest Asia Subregional Forum on Sustainable Development. And please allow me to first acknowledge the support that has been extended to us by the Subregional Office and its office bearers. And borrowing from their knowledge base, please also allow us to share a few reflections from our engagement, especially from an LDC perspective. First, a clear message from the forum was that our sub-region remains off track on most SDGs, with widening inequalities, climate stress, persistent data gaps, and financing constraints emerging as common structural bottlenecks. Across SDGs 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17, we heard repeatedly that fragmented planning, weak coordination, and limited fiscal space are slowing progress. This reinforces the urgency for integrated whole-of-government approaches, supported by stronger regional cooperation and evidence-based planning. If I may, Mr. Chair, from Bangladesh's experience, alignment of SDGs with national development frameworks has always been essential. Our coordination mechanism, led by the Prime Minister's Office, has helped mobilize ministries under a unified agenda, while our voluntary national reviews have served as platforms for honest reflection, stakeholder engagement, and policy calibration. At the forum, we emphasize that VNRs must go beyond reporting. They should actively inform long-term planning, LDC graduation strategies, and digital data systems. Going forward, strengthening feedback loops with voluntary local reviews to ensure SDGs are localized and financed adequately down to the districts and municipalities should be a priority. Second, on SDG 7 and energy transition, Bangladesh shared its national action plans centered on renewable expansion, energy efficiency, and regional power trade. Solar energy has become a key pillar through rooftop systems, solar home programs, and competitive tenders, supported by policy instruments such as the Renewable Energy Policy 2025, neat metering guidelines, and fiscal incentives for private investors. We also highlighted growing cross-border electricity trade, including imports from India and Nepal, as a practical example of regional cooperation in action. However, we were also candid about our challenges at the forum: land scarcity for large solar parks, grid-constrained system losses, financing barriers, and the need to balance renewable deployment with agricultural land protection. These realities echo across SSWA countries. The forum underscored that financing remains the single largest barrier to energy transition, and that concessional finance, blended finance, and de-risking instruments are indispensable for unlocking large-scale clean energy investments. Importantly, participants stressed that energy transition must be inclusive and socially just, ensuring benefits reach women, low-income households, and remote communities, not only those who can afford rooftop solar. Third, on SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, rapid urbanization is outpacing institutional capacity across the sub-region. Informal settlements, housing shortages, and rising climate vulnerabilities are placing immense pressure on cities, especially smaller and intermediate ones. Nearly 60% of SDG 11 indicators lack municipal-level data, limiting evidence-based planning. The forum highlighted the need for empowered local authorities, predictable municipal financing, unified building codes, and integrated urban planning, alongside participatory approaches engaging women, youth, and civil society. Fourth, the discussions on VNRs and VLRs offered a powerful reminder that governments cannot accelerate SDGs alone. Civil society and youth across SSWA are playing critical roles in generating community-level data, monitoring progress, and amplifying marginalized voices. Yet shrinking civic space and funding constraints threaten these contributions. We collectively agreed that participation must be institutionalized, not ad hoc, and that integrated VNR-VLR systems can break silos, improve vertical coherence, and strengthen accountability across all levels of governance. Finally, a recurring theme throughout the forum was the strategic importance of regional cooperation. Platforms such as SAARC and BIMSTEC offer concrete opportunities for cross-border energy trade, harmonized standards, coordinated early warning systems, and shared learning on urban resilience and climate adaptation. For countries like Bangladesh preparing for post-LDC graduation, such cooperation is not just optional, it is also essential to offset declining concessional finance and to build collective resilience. In conclusion, we see SDG acceleration in South and Southwest Asia resting on 5 pillars. 1, integrated planning and whole-of-government coordination. 2, scaled-up affordable SDG financing through innovative instruments. 3, stronger localization via VNR-VLR linkages and local data systems. 4, institutionalized engagement of civil society and youth. And 5, deepened regional cooperation on energy, cities, and climate resilience. As we move towards APF-SD 2026 and the HLPF, or the conclusion of APF-SD 2026 and the HLPF, Bangladesh remains committed to working with ESCAP and our sub-regional partners to translate these shared insights into practical, inclusive, and transformative action. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your insightful intervention. I'm now pleased to introduce Mr. Vitaly Alexandrov, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Kazakhstan to ESCAP, who will brief us on the discussions and results of the North and Central Asia SDG Forum. Mr. Vitaly Alexandrov, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, thank you a lot, distinguished colleagues. Good day, great honor to be here, great forum, a lot of very successful and useful meetings. Please allow me to thank all delegations for cooperation, for dialogue, and wish you to have the great achievements on this event. Regarding the 9th North and Central Asia Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals took place from 4th to 5th September 2025 in Almaty, Kazakhstan. I would like to share an analysis on the region's progress toward achieving several of these goals. Progress towards achieving these goals in North and Central Asia has remained uneven, making it imperative to accelerate joint efforts. Progress includes improved access to drinking water, clean energy investment, urban air quality, and increased mobile network coverage. Challenges include water pollution, decreasing renewable share, low research and development investments, and increasing disaster losses. As 7 out of 9 countries in North and Central Asia are landlocked development countries, the Avasa program of action is highly relevant for North and Central Asia as it highlights the special development needs and challenges faced by landlocked developed countries. Progress on thematic SDGs in North and Central Asia. Goal 6, clean water and sanitation, and Goal 7, affordable and clean energy, are closely intertwined in North and Central Asia due to shared transboundary rivers basins and further development on its immense hydropower potential. Melting glaciers due to climate change pose a significant long-term threat to water security in the sub-region, while a transition into a low-carbon energy system can significantly reduce water consumption in Central Asia. Integrated water resources management was recognized as a holistic governance framework that enables equitable benefit sharing of transboundary water resources between agriculture, energy, industries, and utilities. However, strong institutions and robust legal frameworks are required to facilitate data sharing, tariff reforms, public-private partnership arrangements, and innovative finance in water and energy sectors. On Goal 9, innovations, industry, and infrastructure. North and Central Asia has widely adopted national strategies in NI and digital transformation. However, limited investment, weak infrastructure, and fragmented policies constrain the full realizations of sub-regional potential. Closing these gaps requires better infrastructure, supportive industrial policies, and inclusive human development, especially for women and youth, to drive innovation and broader SDG progress. Transport and logistic infrastructure development is still recognized as a key priority to ensure access to global markets and supply chains for the sub-region. Transport digitalization and electric mobility solutions play an increasingly vital role on improving traffic management and reducing pollution and emissions in the sub-region. On Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities, rapid urbanization has created new economic opportunities in North and Central Asia. However, cities face challenges in unplanned spatial expansion, social isolations for vulnerable groups, and increasing exposure to climate change impacts. Major cities have been actively adopting smart city technologies and enhance urban livability. At the same time, the inclusion of women, youth, and persons with disabilities in urban disaster risk reduction is essential to ensure exclusive, gender-responsive, and resilient urban development. On Goal 17, Partnership for the Goals, advancement in national inclusive policies, youth-led climate volunteerism, and disability-inclusive disaster risk reduction frameworks demonstrated North and Central Asia's commitments to leave no one behind. Areas of concrete sub-regional cooperation and opportunities for achieving the SDGs. First of all, at the 2025 SDG forums held in Almaty, Kazakhstan has highlighted the critical importance of intensifying regional cooperation based on the principle of good neighborliness, partnership, and mutual benefit for the implementation of the SDGs. Second, regional organizations played a key role in aligning national strategies with the 2030 agenda through regional cooperation. Notable examples include the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Program 2030 strategy, the Economic Cooperation Organization compliance of the SDG Performance Index. Third, in the United Nations Special Program for the Economics of Central Asia, SPECA, is recognized as a unique platform for technical cooperation, building trust, and fostering dialogue. The operationalization of the SPECA Multi-Partner Trust Fund will provide fresh momentum in regional priorities, accelerating progress on digitalized trade corridors, cross-border energy system, and sustainable transport solution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander, for sharing those comprehensive remarks. Now it's my pleasure to invite Ms. Chatwadi Chendavonse, Deputy Director General of the Department of ASEAN Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand, who will present the key insights emerging from the Southeast Asia Forum.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chendavonse, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity for me to speak on behalf of my colleagues from ASEAN, which represents now all 11 countries in Southeast Asia. And this session indeed re-emphasizes the critical role of regional and sub-regional cooperation in translating global commitments into tangible outcomes. And this is particularly timely as global progress on the SDGs has been increasingly challenged by shifting political priorities, including the step back of the US from SDGs related commitments. But for ASEAN, sustainable development remains one of our core priorities, and I note that only around 14% of SDG targets in the Asia Pacific are on track, and with less than 5 years remaining, I think this is the time that we need to accelerate our action. And for Southeast Asia, progress across the SDGs has also been uneven, and although encouraging progresses have been made in various goals, there remain persistent challenges on goals related to hunger, decent work, inequalities, and partnerships, as well as on particular concern on the, insufficient data and data gaps on goals related to gender equality and life below water and peace. Taken together, all these trends highlight the importance of sub-regional approaches that are responsive to national context and evolving global trends. And in this context, ASEAN continues to strengthen its cooperation to advance sustainable development. A key milestone was the adoption of the endorsement of the Complementarities Initiative 2.0 by the ASEAN leaders and UN Secretary General at the 15th ASEAN UN Summit in Kuala Lumpur last October. This aims to enhance the complementarities between the ASEAN Community Vision 2045, whose implementation starts this year, and the United Nations 2030 agenda. This will help ensure that regional priorities remain connected to global goals and demonstrate ASEAN's resolve to address emerging challenges. To advance sustainability agenda, ASEAN has also been leveraging various SDGs-related platforms to accelerate action, review progress, and harmonize policies, and to share best practices on SDGs implementation. And these forums, for example, the high-level brainstorming dialogue on enhancing complementarities between the ASEAN Community Vision and the United Nations 2030 agenda, the ASEAN Forum on SDGs with national development planning agencies, the ASEAN Circular Economy Forum, as well as the Southeast Asia Multi-Stakeholder Forum on SDGs, which is led by the ESCAP. And together, all these platforms bring together government agencies, civil society, academia, the private sector, and ASEAN's external partners, reflecting a strong commitment to inclusive and whole-of-society approaches to sustainable development. And in order to further enhance the coherence and impact in the region, ASEAN is also seeking to streamline all these relevant SDG-related forums into a single overarching platform under the umbrella of the ASEAN Sustainability Week. And this is again reflects our strong commitment to the implementation of SDG 17, a partnership for the goal. Meanwhile, ASEAN also continues to intensify our efforts on SDGs through concrete actions under the relevant ASEAN sectoral bodies. And I'd just like to highlight the sectors on energy, as ASEAN is also accelerating the establishment of the ASEAN power grid, which will help us advance and promote renewable energy interconnectedness in the region. And also we are also leveraging on the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility to help us advance sustainable infrastructure projects in our region. In the framework of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, Thailand, with our representative in the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, we are organizing a regional forum on human rights cities in ASEAN to localize human rights for inclusive development. This forum is expected to respond to the growing regional interest in participatory governance and city-level leadership on human rights in response to the rapid urbanization in ASEAN, where cities are engines of economic growth, which represent both opportunities and challenges with inequalities, barriers to accessibility, and social exclusion. To conclude, I'd just like to reiterate that the undertakings within the relevant ASEAN frameworks demonstrate the critical role that regional cooperation plays in advancing sustainable development, and this includes by aligning the SDGs with regional ASEAN community building frameworks. And as the ASEAN coordinator for sustainable development cooperation, Thailand will continue working closely with all ASEAN and external partners to further enhance our collective efforts on SDGs through initiatives and relevant ASEAN mechanisms. I hope that this will ensure that no one is left behind in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chindawanse, for sharing those valuable perspectives. Now, I'm very pleased to invite Ms. Tatiana Utanga, Foreign Service Officer in the Treaties, Multilaterals and Oceans Division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Immigration of the Cook Islands, to report on the outcomes of the Pacific Subregional Forum.
Thank you, Chair.
Tatiana Utanga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Pacific SIDS continue to grapple with complex and interrelated challenges, including the impacts of climate change, rising geopolitical tensions, economic vulnerability driven by structural limitations and external shocks, and persistent social issues such as gender inequality and youth unemployment. The ESCAP Subregional Office for the Pacific and the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat, in partnership with the Pacific Catastrophe Risk Insurance Company, co-hosted the 9th Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development held in Suva, Fiji from October 29th and 30th, 2025. This was an opportunity for all Pacific stakeholders to develop sustainable and inclusive solutions to accelerate progress on the SDGs and ensure no one is left behind. According to 2025 data, Pacific SIDS have made significant efforts in implementing the 2030 Agenda, particularly on SDG 2, SDG 3, SDG 7, and SDG 8. However, despite these efforts, no country is on track to achieve any of the SDGs by 2030. More needs to be done to reverse negative trends in Goals 1, 11, 13, and 15. Contributing to the regression in these goals are the impacts of disasters. Turning to the goals under review, SDG 6. Water security is vital to broader development goals, and this has been recognized at the highest political level by the Pacific Islands Forum leaders. However, there are large rural-urban gaps in access to basic water and sanitation in the Pacific, exacerbated by climate shocks and disasters. Data on water quality remains limited, hindering planning and accountability. SDG 7. Our smaller remote islands lag in renewable energy and access due to high costs, logistical barriers, and climate vulnerabilities. Despite our strong commitments to global and national energy goals, progress in the Pacific is hindered by gaps in investment, implementation, and capacity, as well as by weak policies. We recognize that strengthening the regulatory environment through legislative reforms and independent energy regulators would promote transparency, attract private investment, enhance competition, and ensure the long-term sustainability of energy initiatives. SDG 9. We also recognize that without major investments, our deficits in resilient infrastructure, diversified industries, and digital inclusion, which reinforce inequality, unemployment, and disparities within the Pacific, will continue to constrain long-term growth and undermine progress and development. Resilient infrastructure is the first line of defense against disasters and foundational to health, productivity, and inclusive growth. SDG 11. Urbanization can create opportunities for economic growth and higher living standards, and in the Pacific, the rate of urbanization averages 25% and is rising rapidly. However, urbanization is often in formal settlements and in low-lying, disaster-prone areas. We need to develop integrated and inclusive urban policies tackling demographic shifts and climate change simultaneously. Lastly, SDG 17. During our Pacific Sustainable Forum, we acknowledge the critical role youth play in implementing the 2030 Agenda, and we called for the formalization of their participation alongside greater engagement of civil society. Youth-led initiatives already address key regional challenges, yet systemic barriers such as funding constraints and policies far removed from their realities continue to limit their inclusion. Now, despite the challenges, the Pacific remains a region of resilience, leadership, and innovation. Our overarching Pacific framework, the 2050 Strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, unites and drives our commitment to advance a resilient, prosperous, and inclusive Pacific. Our Pacific youth led one of the most significant diplomatic movements in recent history in driving the campaign that led to the International Court of Justice advisory opinion on climate change, providing strengthened legal clarity to support the efforts of countries in the Pacific to seek enhanced protection and redress. In the Pacific, partnerships and collaboration are essential to achieving national, regional, and internationally agreed developmental objectives. We require private sector investments through public-private partnerships and corporate social responsibility initiatives, and enhanced collaboration with regional and international financing institutions to scale up infrastructure, including access to energy and sustainable cities and communities. However, investments models must fit the Pacific's realities, including blended finance, concessional loans, and public-private partnerships to attract capital and share risk. Financial cooperation will pool limited resources to achieve the scale needed to attract global capital. At the same time, partnerships and collaboration must ensure that communities are partners and core to the decisions to reflect community priorities, while local capacity should be strengthened and sustainable funding should reach those closest to and impacted. And cultural resilience is core to the Pacific and sustainable development, embedding community organizations, traditional leaders, women, and youth from the outset. Mita Kimata, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Utanga, for your very engaging and insightful remarks. We now come to the final intervention in this panel. I'm delighted to invite Mr. Danish Tariq of the Youth Advocacy Network, Pakistan, speaking on behalf of the Youth, Children, and Adolescents constituency to share key perspectives and recommendations from the major groups and stakeholders. Mr. Tariq, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Excellencies, and distinguished delegates. I'm speaking on behalf of APRSM, Youth, Children, and Adolescents constituency, and I'm very pleased to bring the sub-regional perspectives that include youth and other constituencies emerging from the South and Southwest Asia Youth Assembly, and consultations of South and Southwest Asia, Southeast Asia, North and Central Asia, East and Northeast Asia, and the Pacific. Across all sub-regions, one message is consistent: we are not facing a gap in commitments. We are facing a gap in implementation, equity, justice, and accountability. With only 4 years remaining until 2030, progress in Asia Pacific continues to move unevenly. Gains in infrastructure and digital expansion are being offset by widening inequalities, rising debt burdens, intensifying climate disasters, shrinking civic space, and fragmenting multilateralism. Many countries advance individual targets while regressing on interconnected goals, undermining the indivisible nature of the 2030 Agenda. In alignment with the goals under review at the 2026 High Level Political Forum, numerous consultations across 17 constituencies and 5 sub-regions have identified shared regional concerns. Across South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and the Pacific, access to safe water is increasingly threatened by climate variability, salinization, flooding, glacial loss, and pollution. The challenge is no longer coverage only, but affordability, quality, and long-term water security, particularly for informal settlements, rural communities, mountainous areas, and small islands. Renewable energy expansion is accelerating, yet transitions remain unequal, dominated by the profiteering interest of the fossil fuels industries. Rural, remote, and low-income communities continue to face unreliable access and high energy cost. Energy transitions must protect livelihoods, ensure community participation, and prevent new forms of inequalities. Digitalization and infrastructure development are advancing across the region, but benefits remain uneven. Small economies, landlocked countries, and marginalized communities face barriers in technology access, financing, and skills development, widening the digital divide rather than closing it. Rapid urbanization is creating expanding informal settlements, housing insecurity, disaster exposure, and inadequate public service. Cities are growing faster than planning systems can respond, leaving local governments under-resourced to deliver on adaptation and resilience. Across all subregions, debt distress, illicit financial flows, and constrained fiscal space are impeding the SDGs implementation. Financing framework still prioritize creditworthiness over vulnerability, while development cooperation remains fragmented and unpredictable, with the unmet ODA commitments amounting to $7.2 trillion by 2025. In many contexts, progress remains heavily reliant on external financing, slowing nationally owned and equity-centered implementation. From the Pacific perspective, implementation must reflect the structural realities of small island states. Climate and development finance must be anticipatory and locally delivered, ensuring resources reach communities before crises escalate, while climate justice must acknowledge layered historical impacts that continue to exacerbate present vulnerabilities. Equitable Pacific representation and protection of sovereignty over ocean resources remain essential to meaningful globalization of the SDGs. Across regions and constituencies, youth, women, workers, indigenous people, and civil society, 4 priorities emerged. Financing must reach people, not only projects. Without reform of the international financial architecture, countries most affected by crises remain trapped in cycles of borrowing and recovery. Number 2, climate action must be just. Communities require livelihood protection, adaptation, financing, loss and damage support, and participation in decisions affecting their futures. Number 3, data must reflect lived realities. Large portions of SDGs indicators remain unmeasurable at local levels, barely covering 53% of the indicators regionally. Community-generated and disaggregated data are essential to reveal inequalities hidden within national averages, particularly among rural population, migrants, informal workers, and geographically isolated communities. Number 4, restrictions on meaningful participation undermine accountability and weaken implementation of the SDGs. As follow-up on financing for development, sub-regional dialogue stressed that progress on all goals under review depends on meaningful reform of financing systems. We therefore emphasize the need to operationalize vulnerability-based financing approaches, expand grant-based climate and development finance, address debt sustainability and fiscal constraints, curb neoliberal trade regimes and illicit financial flows, align investments with public systems including water, energy access, resilient infrastructure, and sustainable urban services. Financing must enable national priorities rather than impose external policy conditions. Subregions are not merely implementation zones, they are spaces of innovation. community disaster response systems, cooperative economies, locally managed water systems, decentralized renewable energy, and youth-led monitoring initiatives already exist, but remain underfinanced and under-recognized. The final 4 years must become a period of redistribution of resources, decision-making, power, and accountability. Colleagues, people across Asia Pacific are not asking whether the SDGs are possible. They're asking whether there is political will to prioritize justice over convenience. The credibility of the 2030 agenda will not be measured by fancy reports, but narrowing inequality, increasing trust, and restoring dignity and rights in daily lives. The years ahead demand courage to reform the system, to share the power, to realize development justice now. Let us ensure that the final stretch to 2030 becomes a period of delivery, not excuses and explanations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danish, for your insightful and comprehensive remarks. Dear participants, this concludes our panel discussion. Before passing the mic back to the chair, allow me a personal reflection to summarize the great interventions we heard today. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists for sharing your insightful reflections and valuable perspectives during the important session of the APFSD Subregional Dialogue. Your contributions have shed light on the critical challenges we face in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. While we acknowledge that the overall SDG outlook presents significant hurdles, it is heartening to see that countries at the subregional level are coming together to identify shared solutions. This spirit of collaboration exemplifies the resilience, determination, and innovation required to overcome persistent barriers and unlock new pathways towards sustainable development. Today's discussion reaffirms the vital role of regional and subregional cooperation as a catalyst for progress. By pooling resources, knowledge, and best practices, countries can tackle complex issues more effectively and foster inclusive growth that benefits everyone. Thank you once again to our panelists and participants for your dedication to advancing a more sustainable, inclusive, and cooperative future for our region. Thank you.
I would like to thank again to Mr. Bassanjaf for your excellent moderation, and thank you very much for all panelists for their valuable insight and experience shared with our delegations. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I'm pleased to invite this now intervention of sub-agenda item 4, implementation of 2030 agenda for sustainable development at sub-regional level. Now I will open the floor for statement from delegates in the speaking order as received from Secretariat. I kindly remind delegates again to limit their statement to no longer than 3 minutes length to allow all delegates the opportunities to speak. And now I recognize the distinguished delegates from Palau to be followed by distinguished delegates from Kazakhstan. Excellencies, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. With 4 years left to deliver on the promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the reality is stark. We are not on track to achieve the SDGs. For small island developing states like Palau, progress remains slow and uneven, often undermined by external shocks beyond our control. Multiple and compounded challenges, climate change, and sea level rise severely undermine our development efforts. We are no longer on the front line of the climate crisis. We are in the climate crisis. It is for this reason that Palau, as the chair of the Alliance of Small Island States, call for urgent strengthened support for the Pacific subregion to accelerate implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, ABAS. Allow me to highlight 3 key points on how we can accelerate implementation. First, strengthening national statistical systems and monitoring frameworks will ensure that SDG implementation is evidence-based and responsive to our realities. Following the UN General Assembly's endorsement of the ABAS Monitoring and Evaluation Framework, its complementarity to the SDG targets will ensure that implementation is deliberate and targeted. Second, financing for development must be strengthened. We welcome the adoption of the Sevilla Commitment and reiterated support for the reforming of the global financial architecture, including its action-oriented approach to more nuanced approaches to graduation and access to concessional finance. For Palau, like many other SIDS, GDP per capita alone does not capture the real risks and vulnerabilities we face. The use of measures beyond GDP, including the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, and its applications across the UN, MDBs, and IFIs will be critical to unlocking critical concessional financing for SIDS and expanding their fiscal space. Third, this year's review of SDG 7 is of particular importance given the linkage between energy and climate action. The goal of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius will not be possible without an accelerated global energy transition. While SIDS have significant renewable energy potential, deployment remains limited due to high upfront costs and constrained access to affordable capital. Addressing barriers in accessing and mobilizing financing to deploy SIDS-specific technologies will be essential to fulfilling these commitments. In closing, Palau remains steadfast in its commitment to implement the 2030 Agenda, but we cannot do it alone. Noting with concern the regressions in ODA and development finance, the unique vulnerabilities of SIDS still require tailored support from the international community, including the UN system. The Pacific relies heavily on the sub-regional and multi-country offices, and we call on our partners to ensure that they are adequately equipped with the resources and expertise necessary to address our unique development challenges. I thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegates from Palau. Now I invite distinguished delegates from Kazakhstan to be followed by APRCM.
Good day again, the distinguished chair. There is no country statement from Kazakhstan on this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we will follow with APRCM to be followed by Kiribati.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Excellencies. I am Mito Sorhel, Chair of the World Fair Trade Organization Asia, speaking on behalf of the Asia-Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism, APRCM. As we approach 2030, Asia and the Pacific show progress in partnership, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Social enterprises are thriving, impact investing is growing, and ESG is mainstream. Yet, through a development justice lens, we must acknowledge a tougher reality. The system is adjusting to survive, not transforming. Social and community enterprises built by farmers, women, indigenous peoples, migrants, refugees, and informal workers are not market trends, but responses to exclusion and exploitation. However, current frameworks favor scalable investor-ready enterprises, leaving grassroots collectives struggling for access to finance, market, and policy support. Trade and investment regimes continue to be shaped by corporate interest, while debt-driven models force governments to prioritize foreign investment over local sovereignty. Trade agreements open markets, but small producers face unstable prices, climate shocks, and competition from transnational corporation. Fair trade and cooperative models have proven that living incomes, democratic ownership, and environmental stewardship are sustainable. Instead of centering these models, government treat them as niche alternatives to an extractive economy. This is containment, not transformation. Women still subsidize economies through unpaid care work. Community enterprises receive little support to overcome structural inequalities. And climate vulnerable groups are expected to adapt while corporate extraction expands. Development justice requires structural change. Trade and procurement policies that prioritize cooperatives and fair trade producers. Grant-based solidarity financing, not more debt or blended finance that privatizes profit. Binding corporate accountability, universal social protection, recognition of care work, and real decision-making power for civil society and producers. The real question is not if social enterprises can scale, but if governments are ready to challenge corporate power, unjust debt, and unequal trade. To truly leave no one behind, we must scale justice, not just markets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from IPRCM. Now I would like to give the floor distinguished delegates from Kiribati to be followed by Sika.
Mary, and thank you, Chair. I am pleased to present Kiribati's progress on the implementation of the SDGs. Kiribati remains committed in the implementation of the SDGs and recognize that our development efforts in realizing the SDGs will continue to be hampered by our structural vulnerabilities and financial constraints. The implementation of the SDGs requires key infrastructure and institutional capacity to be in place. In the face of these profound challenges, Kiribati remains committed to transforming these challenges into opportunities. However, this alone is not enough. Kiribati has made progress in investment in climate resilient infrastructure to safeguard our communities and sustain essential services. The government also continues significant investment in upgrading and rehabilitating roads, runways, and maritime infrastructure, including enhancing sustainable energy, water, and sanitation systems in the outer island communities across Kiribati to ensure access to essential services and social inclusion. However, the impacts of climate change continue to disproportionately affect our key infrastructure. Kiribati also remains committed to advancing physical sustainability and adopting targeted spending measures as a foundation for achieving the SDGs. This includes strengthening social protection systems and fiscal management through prudent budgetary policies, enhancing national systems, expanding our revenue base, and prioritizing infrastructure investment. Kiribati recognizes remittances as driver to development growth and is committed in providing targeted support to strengthen labor mobility. Kiribati also prioritizes these investments as critical to supporting our dispersed island population, ensuring that no one is left behind. However, volatility and uncertainty of key revenue sources remain significant challenges. Kiribati will continue to work closely with development partners, including strengthened cooperation within the Pacific sub-regions, where countries share common vulnerabilities and development challenges. Continued and enhanced support through sustainable financing, statistical data caps, and capacity building is vital to accelerate progress and ensure responses to our development needs are promptly addressed. However, assessing donor funding is not always easy, and Kiribati continues to strengthen its institutional capacity and coordination mechanisms to improve access to available financing, and ensure its effective implementation. In closing, Kiribati reaffirms its strong commitments to the SDGs. We strongly advocate for greater access to climate finance and concessional resources to support our resilient investments in ensuring an inclusive and sustainable future for our people. Kamdapa, and thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegates from Kiribati. Now I'd like to give the floor distinguished delegate from SICA to be followed by Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Let me highlight the important contribution of SICA to transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated actions for the 2030 agenda in SICA and ESCAP regions. With 34 years of gradual evolution from a dialogue platform into a mature structure with broad mandate and diverse institutions, bringing together quite a diverse membership, SICA is currently steered by the chairmanship of Azerbaijan, and its work currently focuses on three main priorities: connectivity, digitalization, and sustainable development. These priorities strongly correlate with main messages of the Doha Declaration of the Second World Summit for Social Development. SICA member states pursue development of SMEs as a strategic driver of national economies. SICA Business Council provides opportunities for equipping SMEs with tools and training in digital marketing, e-commerce, and data management, contributing to job creation and eradication of poverty. While the SICA Finance Summit may become another element of multilateral dialogue on adapting the international financial architecture to present and future challenges. Amid rapidly evolving labor markets facing mounting pressure to adapt to changing realities and demands, SICA Partnership Network of leading universities is designed to provide an avenue for sharing innovative approaches to education, skill development, and employment resilience. Our member states also address engagement of youth in the social development and their access to decent work. SICA Youth Council provides a platform for collaboration and innovation among young leaders and policymakers. Last year, Azerbaijani chairship initiated the establishment of SICA Women Council to promote women empowerment in line with 1995 Beijing Declaration. In April, Baku will host the SICA conference on amplifying women voices across SICA for sustainable growth and the inaugural meeting of the Council. Doha Declaration elevated volunteerism as a pillar of social cohesion. To complement this commitment, the SICA Secretariat has initiated a compilation of best volunteerism practices in SICA member states and intends to present it at a side event with UN volunteers on the margins of the high-level political forum in July 2026. Furthermore, we plan to hold a dedicated event on promoting sustainable growth in the SICA member states through advancing a society for all ages on the margins of the 82nd Commission session in Baku in April. Apart from this, SICA has a broad involvement with the environmental agenda. In support of SICA host country Kazakhstan, we intend to hold a high-level meeting within the Regional Environmental Summit in Astana in April to highlight long-term and acute environmental challenges in the SICA region. Last year, Azerbaijan organized a SICA side event on water security in Dushanbe and hosted Baku Water Week in September. This year in May, Tajikistan will host the fourth high-level international conference on the International Decade for Action, Water for Sustainable Development, where SICA also intends to contribute. To conclude, I would like to echo a number of today's statements, recognizing that sustainable development is indispensable for peace and security. Being a pan-Asian organization, SICA can serve as a bridge builder between the global level and regional and sub-regional stakeholders in pursuing sustainable future and social development for all in cooperative manner. Thank you. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegates from SICA, for sharing important information with us. Now I'd like to give the floor to distinguished delegate from Malaysia to be followed by SARC Secretariat.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies and distinguished delegates, Salam Sejahtera, Tajaho, and Vanakkam. Malaysia welcomes the Secretariat report, which captures the deliberations of the ASEAN Multi-Stakeholders Forum on Sustainability held in Bangkok, August 2025. Reflecting on the 5 goals under review, Malaysia wishes to highlight 3 areas for accelerated sub-regional action. Firstly, strengthening resilience in water and energy. The 2025 forum highlighted that while access has expanded, climate-induced floods and salt water intrusion threaten our water security. Malaysia echoes the call for integrated transboundary water management and the adoption of affordable technologies. In energy, as we move towards universal coverage, the fossil fuel dominance noted in the report remains a challenge. Malaysia is committed to the cross-border power trade, advocating for a modernized ASEAN power grid that integrates smart grid and storage solutions. Secondly, bridging the urban-rural and digital divide. Under the 13th Malaysia Plan, the National Economic and Social Development Master Plan from 2026 to 2030, Malaysia is addressing the impact of rapid urbanization through comprehensive housing reform. In addressing the digital literacy gaps, Malaysia is focusing on empowering SMEs, youth, and women entrepreneurs through targeted innovation networks. Thirdly, enhancing partnership and data coherence. We acknowledge that significant financing and data gaps remain. Malaysia strongly supports the call to invest in robust statistical system and to reinforce domestic institutions. We believe that South-South and triangular cooperation are fundamental for scaling the community-based water and urban management models. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, the synergy between the ASEAN Community Vision 2045 and the ESCAP framework is our greatest asset. Under the 13th Malaysia Plan, Malaysia remains dedicated to fostering multi-stakeholder dialogues that include the private sector and civil society. We call for a unified ASEAN data ecosystem, urging member states to break down silos and streamline information sharing. We invite the UN to facilitate the transfer of vital expertise and foster the high-level dialogues necessary to power the ASEAN Community Vision 2045 and the ASEAN Power Grid. Let us turn the regional potential into collective energy. Salam hormat dan terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Malaysia. Now I invite distinguished delegate from SAARC Secretariat to be followed by G7+.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Across South Asia, progress on Sustainable Development Goals remains uneven and off track. That highlights the need for targeted, sub-region specific strategies to ensure that no one is left behind. Under Goal 6, climate impacts such as drought, floods, glacial outburst, and sea level rise continue to undermine gains compounded by weak infrastructures, fragmented governance, and financing gaps. For Goal 7, fossil fuels still dominate energy system, while access to clean cooking remains low in rural areas. Financing constraint, weak grids, and regulatory barriers hinder cross-border energy cooperation. Goal 9 faces constraints from limited access to finance, skill gaps, and low investments in research and innovations, affecting especially small and medium-sized enterprises. Under Goal 11, rapid and unplanned urbanization strains housing, transport, and public services, while coordination gap and limited data slow inclusive urban development. Goal 17 reminds us shrinking fiscal space, rising debt burdens, and declining development assistance weaken implementation efforts. Mr. Chair, the way forward lies in strengthened regional cooperation. We must deepen water cooperation, investment in climate smart and resilient infrastructure, and foster inclusive partnership. Expanding cross-border power trade, modernizing grids, scaling of renewables, and promoting technology transfer through South-South cooperation can accelerate the energy transition. Enhancing connectivity, digital platforms, and green technology will support industrial diversification. Integrated urban planning and stronger data systems are essential for sustainable cities. Innovative joint financing and guarantee mechanism can mobilize sustainable investment. In this regard, Mr. Chair, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, including its regional centers and the SAARC Development Fund, remain vital platforms to convene, coordinate, and catalyze collective action across South Asia. Mr. Chair, our shared challenge transcends borders. so must our solutions. As we approach 2030, we must move beyond incrementalism and act with urgency and unity to secure a resilient and sustainable future for all. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegates from SACRE Secretariat. Now I'd like to give the floor to G7 Plus to be followed by UNEP.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excellency, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the G7 Plus, as an intergovernmental organization that brings together conflict-affected countries. For G7 Plus, partnership determine whether development efforts can contribute to peace building and state building. In most cases, fragile and conflict-affected countries experience situations of short funding, fragmentation, and driven more by external priorities. This weakens national ownership and trust between communities, partners, and the government. The New Deal for Engagement in Fragile State underlined the effective partnership must be guided by the country-led and country-owned process in supporting countries' transition out of fragility. Therefore, I would like to highlight three key priorities for advancing SDG 17 in fragile contexts in the Asia-Pacific region. First, partnership must be peace-responsive and context-specific. In our region, development, humanitarian, climate, and peace efforts are often intersect. Aligning this effort around national peace-building priorities, such as inclusive political process, security, justice, and social cohesion, are very essential. Secondly, there is a need for flexibility, predictable, and long-term financing. The G7 plus countries in the region, such as Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and Solomon Islands, often face shrinking fiscal space, rising debt burden, and increasing climate-related shocks. We call for enhanced access to concessional finance, debt relief, and restructuring where appropriate, and better coherence between humanitarian, development, and peace financing. Third, partnership must strengthen national institutions and systems, including the statistical data, public financial management, digital infrastructure, and local capacity. Sustainable development must be built from within. It cannot be outsourced. As we approach the final year of the 2030 Agenda, we urge partners to renew their commitment to solidarity with countries farthest behind. For G7+, SDG number 17 is ultimately about trust, shared responsibility, and partnership that help transform fragility into resilience and peace. To conclude, the G7 stands ready to work with all partners in the Asia-Pacific region to ensure that partnerships truly deliver on the promise of sustainable development and lasting peace. I thank you for all your attention.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from G7+, and I would like to give the floor to distinguished delegate from UNEP.
Thank you, Chair. At this year's APFSD, UNEP was pleased to support the roundtables on SDG 7, SDG 6, and on financing for development. UNEP welcomes the focus of this year's forum, and we aim to strengthen our support to coordinated member state action on climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. At the 7th UN Environment Assembly held in Nairobi in December last year, more than 6,000 people representing 186 countries committed to bold actions to drive sustainable solutions, to implement obligations under multilateral environmental agreements and frameworks, and to advancing equitable and inclusive participation in all efforts. I'm also pleased to note that a number of UN Environment Assembly resolutions that were proposed by member states in this region were adopted, including a resolution on the global management of wildfires proposed by India, a resolution on enhancing the meaningful participation of youth in environmental processes proposed by Sri Lanka, a resolution on synergies, cooperation, or collaboration for national implementation of multilateral environmental agreements proposed by Japan, and a resolution on coral reef action proposed by Fiji. This strong voice of Asia-Pacific at the Environment Assembly was facilitated through the 6th Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia-Pacific, held in Fiji in August 2025. The forum served as a platform for member states and other stakeholders to provide valuable regional inputs to the Assembly. At the regional level, UNEP also brings member states together through a number of regional platforms to coordinate action on key environmental challenges from air pollution to oceans to adaptation, as well as environment and health. These include the East Asia Acid Deposition Monitoring Network, the coordinating body on the seas of East Asia, the Asia-Pacific Adaptation Forum, and the Ministerial Forum on Environment and Health. Please allow me to end by noting that UNEP continues to seek stronger partnerships and synergies between our forums and platforms and the APFSD, the Regional Commission and Committee sessions, as well as the broader UN system, in line with UN 80 reform process, and to accelerate progress towards the SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegates from UNEP. Excellencies, we have now reached the end of time allotted for this meeting, and we sincerely apologize for those delegations who have not yet been given the floor. I invite them to submit their written statement, which I'll give due consideration for inclusion of Chair's summary. Allow me to close this agenda item and thank you for all contribution for an excellent meeting. Distinguished delegates, we will now move to agenda item 5, other matters. Before I open the floor for delegation to intervene on other matters, it's my pleasure to report on behalf of the Bureau on the status of credentials of representative of member of 13th Asia-Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development in accordance with Rule of 12 Procedures of Commission. The Bureau of 13 Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development examines the credentials of representatives of 37 member states submitted in accordance with Rule 11 of the Rules of Procedures of Commission and found them to be in order. The Bureau decided to defer any action on the credentials pertaining to the representative of Myanmar at the 13 Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development pending a decision by the General Assembly on the representation of Myanmar in line with General Assembly Resolution 396 of 14 December 1950, acknowledging the report of Credentials Committee for General Assembly and its 80th session. May I take that it is the wish of the Forum to take note of the report of the Bureau? I see no objection, and it's so decided. I'm asking now the distinguished delegates and others if any other matters need to be discussed. Yes, I saw distinguished delegates from Russia Federation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kindly ask you for giving us the floor from a delegation for the representative of Russia to take about the very useful information about Russia's work on the youth track. Please.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые делегаты, с учетом глобального масштаба задач, стоящих на пути к достижению целей по ключевым отраслевым направлениям, особое значение приобретают СУР-17. Партнерство в интересах устойчивого развития. В Российской Федерации на протяжении многих лет уделяется большое внимание вопросам работы с молодежью и развитию международного молодежного сотрудничества. При этом особое значение придается комплексному достижению целей устойчивого развития. В этой связи я бы хотел поделиться успешной практикой по созданию пространства прямого и честного диалога молодежи о построении будущего, основанного на взаимном уважении одного из ключевых глобальных молодежных мероприятий 2026 года о Международном фестивале молодежи. Фестиваль состоится в городе Екатеринбурге в период с 11 по 17 сентября 2026 года. Участниками станут 10 тысяч молодых лидеров из 190 стран мира, 5 тысяч участников из России и столько же из иностранных государств. Традиционно в фестивале примут участие также 1000 подростков в возрасте от 14 до 17 лет. После окончания основной программы фестиваля предусмотрена региональная программа в период с 18 по 21 сентября 2026 года в 30 регионах России. Подать заявку на участие в фестивале могут представители 8 тематических направлений: медиа, образование и науки, государственного управления, гражданские активисты, креативные индустрии, творчество, цифровизация и IT, спорт и предпринимательство. Кроме того, для участников в возрасте от 14 до 17 лет предусмотрен отдельный детский трек. Программная модель фестиваля включает в себя 7 основных блоков: содержательная, полезная, экскурсионная, культурная, спортивная, выставочная и детская программы. В рамках содержательной программы состоятся мероприятия, направленные на обмен опытом, обсуждение актуальных вопросов в области молодежной политики, международного взаимодействия, науки, технологий и образования. На треке полезной программы участники смогут узнать о развитии социальной активности, добровольчества, наставничества и общественно значимых инициатив, направленных на укрепление ценностей и гражданской ответственности. В рамках экскурсионной программы молодежь из разных стран познакомится с историческим, природным и культурным наследием России и Екатеринбурга. На культурном треке представители молодежи посетят творческие и общественные мероприятия фестиваля. В рамках спортивной программы участники смогут обрести навыки командного взаимодействия и принять участие в традиционных, фиджитал и киберспортивных видах активности. Выставочная программа продемонстрирует участникам передовые достижения и потенциал российской науки, промышленности, технологических достижений, культуры и искусства. В завершение отмечу: Екатеринбург в сентябре 2026 года станет точкой притяжения молодежи мира и пространства, где ценности единства и сотрудничества подтверждаются практикой. Уважаемые делегаты, от вашей позиции во многом зависит, насколько широко молодежь ваших стран узнает о возможности принять участие в фестивале. Мы будем признательны за распространение информации о фестивале среди потенциальных участников, образовательных и молодежных организаций. Со своей стороны мы готовы предоставить все необходимые разъяснения по процедуре регистрации, конкурсному отбору и программе. Заявочная кампания завершается 30 апреля 2026 года. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much, delegation from Russia. I see there are no more delegations who wish to take the floor. I now close this agenda item, and many thanks everyone for valuable contributions throughout the day, and we had a very productive meeting. The Secretariat will prepare a report of this meeting for our review and post it on APFSD website by midday, probably tomorrow, Friday 27 of February, and forum will resume tomorrow at 14:30 hours in ESCAP Hall to consider agenda item 6 on the adoption of the report of the forum. And please note that there are a number of events scheduled tomorrow in which you may be interested in attending, and please kindly refer to the list of side events that have been posted on the meeting website. And I kindly ask from Secretariat of the Forum to make housekeeping announcement on that. Please, Julie.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates, as the Chair mentioned, there are a series of side events to be held starting from 9 a.m. tomorrow. Second, the Secretariat wishes to remind each participant to please take a few minutes to complete the online evaluation survey that's now being shown on the screen by scanning the QR code. Having your feedback is important to us as it enables us to improve future forums and events. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.